Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to Regent's House here in Trinity College Dublin. My name is Jennifer Daly. I'm the Research Strategy Officer here in the Office of the Dean of Research in Trinity. I'm very glad to welcome you all to this Torch Annual Forum. Just to give you a little rundown on what's going to happen for the day. I'm going to be the host for the day, so I will introduce the chair of each session and then pass over to the chair to run the session for all of you, and we'll guide you through the day as to where you need to be and where you need to go. A couple little housekeeping notes before we get started. There are fire exits there, and your bathrooms are back downstairs where you came in. Could I ask everyone to make sure that their phones are on silent during the panels, and that's mainly it. So for this first session, we just want to welcome you all here. We're really glad to see so many people from outside of the Alliance as well. It's great to see so much interest in the work of Torch and Charm, and we're really glad to see everyone here in person and online. This first session is just a brief opening ceremony. We're going to hear from 3 speakers. So our first address will be a recorded address from the Provost of Trinity College Dublin, Dr. Linda Doyle, which we will see on the screen now if we're ready to go with it.
Hello everyone. Is fáilte roimh go léir go coláiste na tríonaide Amalia Clia. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you all to the second Torch Annual Forum here in Trinity College Dublin, and I'm very sorry that I can't be with you in person. Gatherings such as this Torch Forum are really important. I was involved in the development of the Charm EU Alliance at a time when we were all grappling with what was meant by European universities. It was in many ways a blank canvas for innovative ideas, and it is wonderful to see the concept coming to life both through our own alliance and further still through such initiatives as Torch. I can't emphasise enough how important it is for universities to work together like this. Endorsing collaboration can sound like a platitude, but it's not a platitude in today's world because we are living at a time where there are a lot of tensions pushing us apart. Last week, I was in New York and had the opportunity to visit Ireland's permanent mission to the United Nations. During the visit, we discussed the upcoming review of the Sustainable Development Goals, and it was so clear that no progress can be made in addressing these major issues unless we are working together. Collaboration is always vital. Collaboration is also vital for universities and is particularly true when it comes to research. It is great that we have now reached a stage where these European university alliances are seen as an important stakeholder in delivering a European research area, a European education area, and in developing a strategy for European universities, and more recently, in the new European Innovation Agenda. Torch is also distinctive for the emphasis it places on interdisciplinarity. I really want to encourage this, and I know from my own area of Professor of Engineering and the Arts, this is very challenging to do, but also hugely rewarding. Before I finish, I would like to thank the European Commission, members of the Torch Network and all the partner universities, Professor Brian Broderick, Torch's Project Director in Trinity, Professor Lorraine Leeson, our former Torch Project Director, and all the staff in Trinity who have been involved with Torch and supported the project's development. The Office of the Dean of Research, Research Development Office, the library staff, Trinity Communications, and staff from all faculties and schools who have contributed to the project. So I wish you all a very successful forum.
Okay, our next speaker is Jordi Garcia, the Vice Rector for Research from the University of Barcelona.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And welcome to the second annual forum. I should say that I am a bit nervous because of the success of this meeting. It's true, as the Provost said, that there are tensions putting us apart. But I think that is a demonstration that we still are happy, not only happy, but willing to collaborate. Because collaboration is absolutely a must to do in terms of education and in terms of research. First, let me start just saying thank you to Brian and to the Trinity College Dublin for hosting us. I will also shall say thanks to Mary Che, who is the, let me say, the head, the soul of the Charm EU Alliance. Jaime Yorca, where is Jaime? Jaime? Jaime. Jaime Yorca, who is the soul of the Torch, together, of course, with Vice Provost or Vice Rector Raúl Ramos, who is here, the Vice Rector of International Affairs at the University of Barcelona. Why I'm a bit nervous? Because I remember the first Torch meeting that was online from Barcelona. We were very few people. The second one, the first official annual forum, was in Budapest last year. We were quite a lot of people, but this is the second. And if I see at the numbers, wow. We have representatives from the Coimbra group of universities, European University Association, on the ERAS Policy Agency, the COARA, Stefan is over there as well, the COARA on Research Assessment Organization, the Irish University Association, the Science Europe, Irish Health Research, Directorate General for Research and Innovation of the European Commission, and especially representative of 15 European alliances. Wow, 15. 1 year ago, I was in Brussels in a meeting organized by one of the alliances. I am sorry, I don't remember the name now of which alliance. We are representative of 3 alliances. And we start talking there about the future of alliances in Europe. And the word Alliance of Alliances was shown there. And I think this is a bit the way where we have to go in the future at the European level, at least. So 250 participants in this forum from all these organizations. So what we do in Torch and what we are so happy that you came here or are there for participating in this a bit busy, I recognize, a bit busy meeting with 3 parallel sessions sometimes. I was talking yesterday with Mary Che, it's about death by success or a life by success. So we really are happy to share ideas between all participants. So in fact, Torch successfully completed the first phase. Now we are in the second phase, concentrated on pilot actions that can help the future at the European level, but not only in research, but also in education. As together, we had a nice discussion yesterday on how research and education should mix together, because in fact they are part of something more important, that is how to go for the challenges of the future. The challenges of the future have, in my opinion, 3 legs: education, research, and transfer to society. And I think that the alliances should work in all 3 aspects, making, and now I know, Michelle, you don't like that word, that the Provost said about promoting interdisciplinarity. Sometimes we say interdisciplinarity, sometimes I heard transdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, but in that European meeting last year, I get in love of another word. That is, as we have to go for challenges, those challenges have to be approached not by interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, but by undisciplinarity. So in my opinion, the word undisciplinarity is really a word that we should start using, because it means just going for something without taking into account what is my background in science or in education. So this is one of the big area in which Torch is working. The other areas are championing open science, of course. I think we all agree that open science is something extremely important in the 21st century. In fact, we have yesterday evening in the internal meeting, escape room activity on open science that was really, really exciting and interesting. The third one is fostering equality, diversity, and inclusivity. I should remind that today is 8th of March. That is the day of, is the International Women's Day. So that's interesting to have this today. And then the fourth one is working towards research assessment. The word COARA, that nobody knew 2 years ago, where is Stefan? I said to him that instead of koala, I used to say koala. Because if you have never had a koala is like that on you all the time. I think koala is fixing in our bodies, university bodies, to set up a new revolution on how we calculate what people is doing at the research level. And then, of course, the last one, but not the least, is intensifying research and innovation cooperation between universities, and if you allow me to say also with regards to the society. I think that the alliances, or the alliance of alliances, should act as a hinge between research, education, and the society. I think we have a couple of sessions today particularly about that. So exploring synergies, sharing knowledges, talking and talking and talking, discussion is something that we will do today a lot. And at the end of the day, I hope that all of we will be very happy of having been here and the new ideas on how to coordinate the alliances and how to go up will be, sorry, I forgot what I said. We'll be very happy of today's here in Dublin and discussing with all our friends and colleagues. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next speaker, thank you, Jaime, sorry, Geordie even. Our next speaker is Kate Morris, who is the head of Campus Engage from the Irish Universities Association. And we're just going to take a second to get her slide set up, and then she will be.
Yeah, okay. I think we're all good. Muchas gracias, Jordi, qué bien, y por una presentación fenomenal y para hablar en inglés. Muchas gracias. So, my name is Kate Morris. I am the head of Campus Engage. I'm based at the Irish Universities Association. So, what's the Irish Universities Association? It is where our 8 presidents of our universities come together to plan and to work together to represent the universities, our research-intense universities, with government, globally, with industry, with society. And I'm going to give you a quick 10, 12-minute presentation on Ireland. What's Ireland doing in this space? We've been working intensely in this space of engaged research, innovation, addressing societal challenges together for possibly up to 10 years. So we're well out the traps. So let's have a little think about where we are right now and what's going on in the system. I must say it's very refreshing to feel that there's something has clicked across Horizon Europe and within our own government and within our universities. There's this real change across the policy landscape that we're going to talk about. I'm going to fly through today. Okay, so the world, we are faced with wicked, complex societal challenges. Okay, we flick on our TV or our smartphones or whatever it is, and day in, day out, we're hit with this negative, fairly intense information about a housing crisis. Many European countries facing real issues around access to housing, biodiversity decimation. Yeah, I heard there's a radio piece this morning on RTE about something like 50% of our natural habitat in Ireland has been lost in the last 70 years. So that's various species of wildlife and so health services. Our health services in Ireland under enormous strain, and of course the energy crisis is really leading to lots of strain and stress and pressure on families looking to make ends meet on a day-to-day basis. So what are we doing across the research and innovation system to address these societal challenges? Okay, we have a problem. We have a problem in the system because we are going at a very slow pace. It's too slow. The time is ticking. Yeah, as I just mentioned that statistic just now on our biodiversity, time is ticking. We don't have the luxury of time, but we're pouring billions into these societal, these innovations and approaches and research to address these societal challenges. And the public, they're apathetic, feeling bootless, useless in the process to address these societal challenges. So what is an approach, and what are we trying to do here across Ireland and now at a European level? So in Ireland, we use a term called engaged research, okay? Engaged research and innovation, which can help to tackle these societal challenges. We did a big consultation across Ireland and with our friends in the UK and the EU Living Knowledge Network to build out a framework on how to do engaged research. So what is engaged research? Ultimately, it's about bringing the beneficiaries of the research into the research process from the get-go. Before you sit down and put pen to paper, you're talking to older people, you're talking to patients, you're talking to the aviation industry, you're bringing them into the project planning piece from the very, very get-go to understand what are the inputs, outputs, outcomes, and ultimately the impact that you want to achieve, and how that will be implemented and evaluated through the research process to change course if needs be, but working with the beneficiaries to keep it relevant, on track. Also, again, it's about this undisciplinary approach or a transdisciplinary approach. So that quadruple helix, so industry, society, government, and our researchers working together in this approach to solve societal challenges. And in our new innovation strategy, which I'll talk about, we're deeply embedding the role of working with policy officials to address societal challenges. There's a big problem as well, is we're only looking at these kind of numbers around tech transfer, jobs, patents, IP. I would argue that those days are over, and it's so enlightening and inspirational about the work that the Science Europe or Europe Science are doing around the CORA initiative to reform research assessment. So we need to really look at the bigger societal impact, both qualitative and quantitative impact of research across health, well-being, environment, arts, culture, obviously industry as well is fundamentally important. So why take on a engaged research approach? Well, it's about getting it right faster, and nowhere did we see that more effective as when we had to tackle the COVID-19 challenge to eradicate, to eliminate or to decrease the spread of COVID-19. And this was all about getting strong leadership, getting people on board, saving time, saving money, and accelerating impact. So we could see it with, production lines of masks, creating a vaccine, actually asking people to stay indoors. It was such a collective effort. But in Ireland, just looking at Ireland at the moment and where we are at in Ireland, and how we connect into the European agenda and the European research area research agenda. So there is political momentum out there right now to get this properly embedded, implementing actually the policy that already exists. So we're great at writing good policy, but how do we get it into action and deliver? So what's very inspiring is that it is now a requirement for funding that you are working with research, innovation, beneficiaries across the Horizon Europe agenda and the societal challenges. And of course in SFI, Science Foundation Ireland Societal Challenge calls also some 65 million on the table to go into those challenges in the coming months. So that is quite a step in the right direction. So Ireland, we're this small little country on the coast of the Atlantic, but we do have quite a competitive edge. Not more for the fact that we can attract lots of global industry into our country through various incentives, but we are a highly networked little country. Yeah, I can pick up the phone, I can email the Assistant Sec Gen in the Department of Further Higher Education, go for a coffee, meet Linda Doyle, Provost of the university. We can reach out and we can network, and we're quite good at that. We're quite good at sitting down and talking things out and building relationships and building trust across those key stakeholders, so government policy officials, the researchers, industry, civil society. So we're networked. We also have a new Department of Further Higher Education. This is a real golden moment. We've civil servants who are there implementing a strategy for innovation. It's on their to-do list. Every day they wake up, they've got to find ways and working groups to get out there and implement what they said they do in their strategy, Impact 2030. Impact 2030, all of this is embedded in there. Yeah, this is our new strategy. Research and innovation for public policy, citizen engagement, industry engagement, it's all in there. We have a new evidence for policy unit, so that's how our researchers are going to work with policy officials across environment, reduce emissions, children and youth affairs, to make sure research is evidence informed, that it's informed by sound data and scientific evidence. So it's actually implementable, and it's actually, you know, we're actually able to deliver impact, and it's not crazy figures about electric cars, that it's based on realistic data to achieve success. Also in Ireland recently, we launched a campaign on creating our future. So we engaged with society. There was up to 80,000 responses from the public asking what are the research and innovation priorities in Ireland. So we now have a set of recommendations that need to be mobilised to inform this. And our aim and our hope is that it's going to be connected in to these societal challenges through Science Foundation Ireland. So, as mentioned, the Koala or the Cora agenda is I find it, the opportunity here is phenomenal. I mean, it's a long time coming, but just congratulations, sincere congratulations for the leadership and that kind of top-down, bottom-up approach to make this happen. And IUA are deeply invested in this. Lisa Keating, our Director of Research and Innovation, has been working with Jim Livesey from Galway, University of Galway, who is a real champion of this and a real expert. So, just to mention again, and I'm trying to emphasise this here, there is a real opportunity to try and shift monies. 800 million euro from Irish government departments goes into research and innovation, not into our universities, but into various consultancy agencies. And we need to think about how our researchers are mobilised to work with, build relationships with policy officials, because they really are the gatekeepers to engaging with society and research beneficiaries, to bring that information to policy officials to say, this will work. This is how we'll build houses, affordable houses. This is how we'll address trans, intersex policy strategy, whatever it is, the societal challenge that we need to address collectively. So it's really important that there's a cultural shift, an attitudinal shift to working with government. Okay, so we're far from delivering on this, right? It's all quite new. We've been doing it for ages, but it's new at a kind of a systems level. So how do we coordinate and how do we take action? So this is our call to action. We need to change attitudes from the top down, and we need to change culture. There's that brilliant Harvard Business Review essay on, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have as much strategy as you want, but unless you have that strong leadership out on the beat trying to change culture throughout, bottom up, top down, forget it. Change infrastructures and roles in universities. We need to realign and reassess what we're doing at an institutional level within the research and innovation departments. Okay, tech transfer has been in operation for years. We need to redefine those roles to be able to implement policy, because without the kind of people power, it's not going to happen. And we need to build capacity. We need to change how people are actually doing this and to support them to have the skills and the competencies to do engaged research and innovation and plan and deliver impact. So quickly, just to close off, what we're doing in Ireland, a sample initiative led by the Irish Universities Association. We've been working with colleagues at the Joint Research Centre, so the Commission Joint Research Centre. We've been working with a number of exceptional Trinity College of Dublin colleagues as well, Sarah Bowman, Michael Foley, who I'll put up on the screen, and Professor Joanna Ivers. But we've been building a 6-week online course. So it's an intense 6-week online course where you go in, it's a train the trainer. So it's a multiplier effect. We are training trainers to get out, beat on the street into universities and deliver training for researchers to embed engaged research, innovation into their research and apply for funding. So here are all our wonderful facilitators. So in the last 8 months, we've trained each of these individuals to become trainers. So they have a target number of people that they need to get out there and then train. And they're embedded across all the SFI, Science Foundation Ireland centres, and the universities and technological universities and other chagas, agricultural, food, and a couple of departments. So what are our outcomes over the last 8 months? Well, we have, as I mentioned, 32 new trainers, and we recently surveyed them, and these guys have delivered 37 training workshops, trained 1,500 researchers. Sorry, go back, that's timed. And they've also, through other events and initiatives, they've reached out to nearly 4,000 individuals across Germany, Japan, Norway, Netherlands, Portugal, Brussels, and Belgium and Canada. So that's it. That's just one of our little initiatives about scaling, skill, competency, capacity. We have a whole rake of other things we're doing through Campus Engage. And to just point of information, is Campus Engage is driven by the presidents of the universities. So they are funded to make sure that this is seeping in and seeing kind of change on the ground across Irish institutions to really implement. Again, we're great at writing policy, but now the challenge is how we implement it for success. So that's it. Thank you for listening. I'll ask you to, we're at campus_engage. So follow us on Twitter, because that's where we release new training initiatives and tools. We have a lot of how-to guidance tools and other initiatives, and we do a lot of webinars and seminars. So we'd love you to join our community of practice. We're very engaged with the CHARM community as well. So I'll say adios, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you to all of our speakers there in our opening ceremony. We're going to move straight into our first plenary session, which is the ERA's Policy Agenda 2022 to 24 and Research and Innovation Cooperation between European Universities. Our chair for this session is Maritel Chavez, the Secretary General of CHARM EU. So if Maritel and our speakers want to join us up at the front here.
Is this you? Okay. Yeah, you can. If I close that, we're in trouble. Mary Jo, that might be room there.
Hello, thank you very much for being here on site and online, because I think we have like 200 participants in total. So thank you very much for being here. I'm not sure if I am the head of CHARM EU or the gap solver among other amazing tasks in the alliances. This session tries to have the background of the ERA policy agenda, and I will present the speakers one by one for the intervention, but I wanted to say that now, after 3 years, the evidence of the cooperation and how European universities are participating and contributing in a very valuable way, and also being influenced in their pathways by the ERA policy agenda, it's an evidence. We see ourselves, and I think I can talk in the name of other alliances as living labs, innovative living labs trying to test transformative activity, and this will be shown in the clusters. Probably you think that we have too many people in each cluster, but our intention was that it serves as a mapping of experience. So just have a tip, a small information on what everyone is doing, and thank you for the 15 alliances contributors to that. So you can then go and see this alliance is doing something interesting. So this session is more about what is happening, what is ERA policy agenda, how some of the significant stakeholders see this policy, and also how this policy connects with the European University Alliance. So first of all, I want to present, I think it's online. Wait a second. Adrian Brian from Science Europe, he accepted to come on behalf of Lydia Borrell. She lost her voice 2 days ago. So thank you very much, Brian, for being here. He is the policy officer in the Science Europe, and he's going to give us the background of the ERA policy agenda. Brian, if you are ready.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I'll be quickly sharing my screen. All right, thank you. So on behalf of Science Europe and obviously on Lydia with Sensor Apologies, we thank you very much for inviting us to the Torch Annual Forum. So I'll be very briefly giving a quick overview of who Science Europe is and who our members are. So we are an association present in Brussels, non-profit. So we represent the major public and public research funders and research performers in Europe, 30 organizations in 30 countries. We do work on two aspects: collaboration between members, finding common practices, common guidelines, common policies, but also in representation, where we represent the common interest in various fora at the EU level and the national level as well. So that's why we do work with the ERA Forum, and we represent in the ERA Forum the funders category of stakeholders together with the cost association. So our core mission is to define long-term perspective for European research and to work towards best practice approaches with a view to ensuring that we can produce, fund, and perform the best quality science that benefits humanity and the planet. To do this, we've set ourselves a series of core values that we reflect in all of our policies and our activities and actions, and that we try to defend everywhere we can, being scientific freedom, autonomy, care, collegiality, collaboration, equality, diversity, inclusion, which I mentioned before, integrity and ethics, openness, and transparency. And we believe that these values are core for the research system, and we try to implement them and promote them as much as we can everywhere. So I'll be also very briefly presenting what our contributions is to ERA. Obviously, as I said, we're part of the ERA Forum, representative for the stakeholders together, funders together with cost. So obviously that's a lot of sites, but so we feel like obviously universities are extremely important actor. That goes without saying, but we also think funders, performing organizations have a role to play and need to be at the table when discussing the implementation of the ERA, but as well as design of the ERA policy agendas. Funders do design instruments, they do fund research, they do develop policies, and so they have a role in steering the research and research ecosystem towards the implementation of the ERA actions, while performance, like universities, implement the changes and are faced with the changes themselves on the ground and have to sort of build the system from the ground up. So in terms of Science Europe and our members' contributions, we did three main things with our main three strategic priorities. So we try shaping research policy development at a European level, try to influence and contribute to the evolution of research culture, and strengthen the role and contribution of science in tackling societal challenges like climate change. We also support and our members to play a great role in the advancement of national European research systems and build strong research ecosystems that benefit science, researchers, and institutions and society. We also work at the international level. We are part of a global initiative, the Global Research Council. We work with in the UN and UNCCC. So in terms of how we've framed our contribution to the ERA actions and the ERA policy agenda itself. So obviously, I'm assuming a lot of you know already the process. stakeholders, associated countries and member states were invited to send their commitments to a series of ERA actions, so the ERA Policy Agenda 2022-2024, in late 2021 up until June 2022. So we've committed ourselves to work together as Science Europe, but also together with COST, on a series of different actions: open science, research and assessment, careers, gender equality, and what we conceptualize as equality, diversity, and inclusion, academic freedom, cross-border collaboration, the green and digital transitions, research infrastructure, and access to excellence. So those are the main priorities we focus on most of our efforts on, although we do work on the other priorities as well together with the members, and our members do work on almost all priorities at the national level. So one of the examples that I would like to bring forward to showcase this a bit, and that's been discussed already during the keynote speeches, is QARA, the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment. So Science Europe, together with EUA and Stephanie there, and Transformational, were part of the drafting committee of the agreement, and we're now part of the QARA steering board. So we do try to play a big role in this, in moving that forward, and try to, together with the colleagues, make it as collaborative, as bottom-up as possible, to make sure that we can hear every voices and bring everybody on board as much as possible. So far, in our view, QARA has been a success. We've got 481 organizations signatories as of February. Of these, we have 423 which are members and are from 35 different countries. We are a big part of our membership, which are committed to QARA, to the agreement, 30 to 40. And we are happy to see that a very wide diversity of organization types have been represented within the QARA. Obviously, a lot of universities have put their weight in there and are participating very actively. 62% of all organizations are universities. We also got RPOs, RFOs, also academies, research community associations, non-profit organizations, and national agencies. So there's a lot of different organization types here which contribute to the success of the initiative. We also are supporting the setting up of the working groups in QARA, and we'll manage one of them once they're established. So now I'll finish the presentation with Science Europe by talking about how we plan on contributing in 2023 specifically to the development of the next policy agenda. So we are currently in the process of developing our strategic vision on what the era is, looking back at the year past and what challenges we have faced, what could be improved, and we're also planning on reflecting on a series of actions, specifically the which on which we've committed, but what we consider to be the main actions of focus for the era, and try to propose actual proposals for this and publish them as well. And we also keep contributing together with our friends at COST to the development of the ERA Forum. Now I'll focus a bit more on the core of the discussions, which are the ERA policy agendas. So first off is what has happened so far, and what have been successes and challenges that have occurred within the first year of the implementation of the new ERA governance and the new ERA policy agenda. Obviously, we've seen that the new governance has improved drastically its involvement of stakeholders. Obviously, we still have issues and there's still improvements to be made, but compared to the previous cycles, it is a massive improvement. We can have gripe with the categories. We can, refine the way stakeholders are engaged in subgroups, in the forum itself, and how the categories are defined, but it is a lot more participative than what it was. We feel like there's a stronger impetus to the ERA itself, more commitments from member states, more discussions, more participations, more actions, more subgroups. There's a lot more things happening at the EU level, and there seems to be more engagement at the member state level as well. So that is a success for us. And we also set up a subgroup on the global approach to research and innovation, which is working very well, which is very inclusive, and has a lot of activities and discussions ongoing. However, we can see a series of challenges. Not all ERA actions have progressed in the same way. Some of them progress very well, like the one on cross-border collaboration on the global approach, but some of them have not progressed that far, or are just mostly talking shops with limited real outcomes. We've seen that the synergies between different actions are not necessarily as exploited as we thought they could be. We mentioned the action on Quora, which is part of the action on research assessment, and also research careers, which is like research action, ERA action 4. And between the two, we could have exploited better synergies and make sure that they work together with a common goal a bit more. We also considered that some key issues are missing from the current policy agenda. We have no real action on ethics and integrity, for instance, and the research element for the green transition and digital transitions are pretty much not there because the actions focus mostly on industrial ecosystems. So that's overall our assessment of what we've done so far. There will be continued work up until 2024. At the end of 2024, there will be new subgroups, there will be new activities, new actions, new workshops coming up. So obviously things are evolving. There's a lot of work being done. But part of this work is defining what's next, especially what's next for the next ERA policy agenda, 2025-2027. So it seems far away because it's supposed to be starting on 1st of January 2025, but discussions are already starting. So the idea to that is developing the core of it, the meat this year and beginning of the next, and in 2024 having the main process of commitments. For us, it brings us a series of opportunities, right? It is a form of a midterm review. We would be halfway through the process of this era, the first 7 years. So it's good to review the ERA policy agenda, review the ERA actions, what works, what could be improved, and how could be brought closer to the bottom-up priorities of universities, of researchers, of performers, of funders, but also of all the other type of institutions, academies, and so on and so forth. It also allows us to reflect on the role of the forum itself and the place of stakeholders within that. How could the experience that we've had built this year, and obviously in 2023 as well, could help us sort of even improve how stakeholders are engaged within the forum and within the subgroups in general. So there are open questions, there are challenges that we think this iteration, this revision of the ERA policy agenda, its new policy agenda, could help solve. How could the role of the forum be improved? So for us, we would like to see more of a focus on a more general view on overseeing the implementation of the ERA actions and making sure that all synergies and the connections are properly exploited. So making sure that those discussions on, is it going well? Is there links to work on? Could be more of a focus. And it's also especially how the ERA policy agenda for 2025-2027 could improve on the previous one. So we potentially would like to see a focus more on a shorter list of issues, of priorities that would affect the research ecosystem a lot more, and focus a bit less on ongoing activities like EOSC, for instance, which are important, but maybe an action on open science could be broader than EOSC. There's a lot of issues that are currently being addressed in the research ecosystem, like publishing models, for instance, which are not really reflected in discussion at the ERA level. And also, I've talked about that already, have a more holistic approach that center around finding solutions for issues that are shared, meaning that, all stakeholders could, feel that all the actions reflect on the challenges they face, the issues to which they try to find solutions, and making sure that all these discussions go towards solving those issues and working towards the same objectives. So yeah, thank you. Happy to take any questions during Q&A as well.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Very inspiring speaking. We will have some questions after. The second speaker is Gareth O'Neill. And he's a principal consultant on Open Science of Technopolis group. He has quite a lot of experience with European universities, so he has been in charge of seeing the progress of some of them and some reports, and also he's a member of the quality committee in CHARM. So, Gareth, please. Thank you.
Just quickly do a mic check. Can you hear me?
If you come over here.
No, I need to be here then, do I? Okay.
Let's get your slides set up there. So, not sure where the mouse is going.
Take your time.
Is that your one?
It is, yes, should be there.
Probably this one.
Let's try it. But I don't think so because
No,
of the time.
you had a PDF, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Can't be
Maybe it's
that
on
one.
one of the other sessions.
Don't think so. No.
Jaime, a copy of Garrett's PDF. 1 second, Garrett. And I'll just check. So my name is Gareth O'Neill. I am a principal consultant on Open Science at Technopolis Group, also an independent expert for the Commission, usually on Open Science, the European Open Science Cloud Research Careers and Research Assessment. And a couple of disclaimers. I'm in the advisory board of Torch. I have reviewed many of the Pilot 1 university alliances and the intermediate reporting. I'm also reviewing many of the Pilot 2 university alliances for their intermediate reporting. And I'm involved, and you might hear about that a bit later, in a report with a colleague, also Irish, Helena Atchinson, on looking at the overall progress of the Pilot 1 university alliances. I leave that on the screen just for a second if anybody wants to grab the slides. Not that there's too much detailed content in there, but if you want to follow along, just grab a picture or a screen grab. I'll give that a second. And if those of you who are taking the picture, could you just put your hand up if it is indeed the slides and it's not my holiday photos, because that has happened. Open science is always a good thing. It works. Perfect. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've been asked to give a little introduction to what we're going to talk about today across the sessions. So I'm going to deep into the policy agenda, and in particular, the university alliances and the so-called transformation modules. So just to give you an idea of the policy agenda, it's a shopping list of 20 different actions. As I've understood from Stefan, this should stay until 24, and then it's a question on which actions will stay on. To my knowledge, the member states have had to commit to particular actions. I think Stefan will tell us a bit more about that. My understanding is that 19 of the actions have hit the threshold on support, 18. So 2, I think, still are waiting on commitment. 17, sorry, 2 are out. So you're going to show this. So 17, 18 of these actions have been supported by the member states, which is quite high, I guess. Just to note here, there's a couple of different areas that you could group them under. One is deepening a truly functioning internal market for knowledge. 2 is together for the twin, green and digital transition and increasing society's participation in the ERA. 4 is amplifying access to research and innovation excellence across the Union. And I think I've skipped 3, have I? And the last one is advancing concerted R&I investments and reforms. I think what's most relevant here for the alliances is Action 13 on empower higher education institutions, maybe to some extent Action 17 on strategic capacity of public RPOs. And I think what's quite relevant for the Torch project and for the CHARM Alliance is Action 1 on open sharing of knowledge, so basically open science and EOSC. 3, reform of research assessment, and I think we'll hear more about COARA later. And 4, on strengthened research careers. So a lot of policy actions here to be dealt with at member state level, and several of them I think relevant for the CHARM/Torch Alliance. Next slide, please. So what are the alliances? Well, from I think around 2018, the European Council asked the Commission to do a number of things. One was to strengthen the strategic partnerships between higher education institutions all across Europe, so to bring them together. 2 was to do that then through so-called university alliances or the University Alliance Initiatives. And the idea there was to bring together around 20 alliances where you would have a bottom-up initiative of universities coming together, let's say with shared interests or shared topics perhaps, or research focus, to work together. And the core idea at the start was to basically build a kind of a campus and allow students to get a degree by combining studies from across those different alliances. Next slide, please. So we actually see 2 sides to this, and we say the Commission speaks with one voice, but there are actually multiple voices within and funding streams within the Commission. So the alliances started under Erasmus+, with the focus there being on education, coming from DG EAC. In 2019, there were 17 of the first Pilot 1 alliances, so CHARM and Torch, I think, will fall under this category. 2020, then you had the second pilot groupings. These were 24 new alliances. 2022, then there was extra or consolidated support for many of those alliances to continue on. And in 2022, if that number is correct, there were 4 new alliances. So quite a number of these university alliances, with a question mark there being on will they all continue? That I don't know. And will they continue in that form? What we do know is many of the alliances have actually started taking on new members. So they seem to be growing to some extent. And the collections of the universities sometimes is quite specific. You see disciplinary focuses, but others it's quite extensive. And there's different, let's say, commonalities across those different alliances. Now, the second side to this was to build on this initiative and start focusing in on the research and innovation. And this is what came from DG RTD, specifically under Horizon 2020 and moving forward. So in 2020, there was around, I think it was up to 2 million was freed out for the 17 Pilot 1 alliances. And again, later on in 2020, there was 2 million opened up for the 24 Pilot 2 alliances. And the idea there was to start getting them to focus together, moving towards transformations in research and innovation. Next slide, please. So this has changed. I'm not even sure if this is still up to date because it's changing quickly. But these are the so-called transformation modules. It started with 6, 1 was added, number 7. And I believe that just recently this has now been rebranded into areas of institutional change. So the idea here is to focus the alliances on specific aspects of change that, let's say, the European Union finds important. Now, these were optional within the alliances. They were allowed to pick which was relevant for them. Interestingly, some picked all of them. Quite an endeavor. Others seem to focus in on a couple, or even within that focus specifically on 1 or 2. For instance, if I look at the Torch project, I see quite a strong focus, particularly on open science. So some of the alliances and the projects seem to have taken a specific strategic focus and have started branding themselves with that. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go down through these very quickly. I'm not going to go into too much detail, so we can move on to the next speaker. But number 1 was developing a common research and innovation agenda and action plan. Again, the focus here on commonalities within a particular alliances in terms of research focus or strategic objectives. Here, the Commission asked for identification of challenges and convergence, preparation of so-called action plans to kick into effect in the projects, identifying the available resources in terms of research resources or infrastructure resources, human capacity, and then focusing in and scaling up on excellence within those alliances. Next slide, please. 2 was on the sharing of resources and infrastructure, so the actual human resources, the digital infrastructures that were already in place. This is quite a complicated endeavor. You're trying to bring together completely different systems, information systems, human systems, try to find the commonalities, and then try to figure out how would you share these across alliances, not just in terms of interoperability, so digital interoperability and security, but also in terms of access management. How do you give access to colleagues or students from another university? Who authorizes it? Who pays for it? Quite complicated, so the alliances are working on this with a focus there on digital infrastructures to allow open science. Next slide. The next one was on strengthening human capital, so people, and particularly researchers and the people who support those researchers. So looking at the framework conditions within the alliances to try and come to a perhaps common framework for all of them within any given specific alliance. Focusing in here on the assessment of academics, assessment of researchers, and here again we see the COARA flag is quite important for this, to reform research assessment. Try to deal with brain drain, pool the knowledge that's there in a specific alliance, and a strong focus on skills and competencies, especially for researchers. So how to promote talent, how to move researchers forward. Next slide, please. The 4th one here was on research, reinforcing cooperation with the non-academic sector. That's quite broad. It means both public and private sector, so engaging governments, engaging policymakers, engaging NGOs, but particularly here engaging industry, companies, SMEs, business. How to pull them in to a given alliance. Interestingly, how to share perhaps contacts that are already in place in many of the universities within an alliance. Many of them will also have, for instance, particular campuses, science or innovation campuses. So how do you pool what's there? How do you commonly look forward and develop strategies for this? So this could be an innovation strategy or strengthening the innovation capacity, focusing in again on researchers and their mindset, how to turn them into a more entrepreneurial mindset. So not just looking inwards at the university, but looking outwards, perhaps helping them to engage with companies or helping them to set up new companies, startups, and basically setting up a whole new innovation pipeline. Next slide, please. The big one here, and I think very, very relevant for now and for the Torch project, is mainstreaming open science. They've broken this down into a couple of categories, basically open access to research publications, research data management, here with a nod to EOSC on fair data management, so not necessarily open, but certainly making data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, so machines know what's in there and know how to help us along with it. Skills and training for open science. Again, we come back to the COARA flag, incentives and rewards. So if we want researchers to do this, we must set up a new system to help them, push them even, and reward them to do open science. Most researchers haven't a clue about what open science is, never mind how to do it. So for an institution to encourage open science, they need to set up the framework conditions within the institution for this. This means revising their entire assessment system, supporting researchers to do open science, such as through data management plans or hiring or assigning data stewards, and making sure that in their assessment systems, they do not just focus on high impact factor articles and citations in journals. It has to go beyond that. And the last one here, to try and trial open science ambassadors or champions or anybody that can push this forward. Next slide, please. We're almost done. The next one was engaging citizens, engaging society in the quite broad sense here. So they listed options for science in society, science communication, citizen science, so working with citizen science, scientists, opening up data basically for citizens or pulling them in, or getting citizens to actually collect data for you, such as through apps, creating teams that will work together, and also creating a more team-focused mindset rather than just individual researchers, and then reaching out not just to the community, let's say, of adults, but even to reach out to schools, push science, increase trust in science. Also here with a nod to the Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide, please. And the last one here, which was added a bit later, was on exploring joint structures. It kind of, from my perspective, crosses over many of the ones that came in. But this is looking at how to set up common technical activities or common technical infrastructure even, facilitating collaboration across the institutions within an alliance, looking at their common challenges, their common solutions, how can they work together on this, and clustering their activities perhaps through disciplinary focus or perhaps through other focuses or strategic objectives, and then sharing the practices. So remember, everything I've said here is focusing on a specific alliance, and then it's down to the members within those alliances to work together, set forward a common agenda and go forward. Of course, the idea being that the alliances at some point will intercommunicate, share what they have together, and openly look at best practices. Next, and I think last slide. So just a minor disclaimer here as well. There's a report that will be published, I think in March or April, by the Research Executive Agency. This is the one I mentioned at the start, that RIA, the Commission, myself and another Irish colleague, Helena Atchison, were involved in. Some of the alliances, I believe, have already seen some parts of this report. I think we asked them to check that particular practices were in there. I think you will get the full report soon, but I leave that to our RIA colleagues. I'm not sure that's the title, but in any case, the title we gave it was Progress of Pilot 1 University Alliance Projects under the specific call. And here we looked at the challenges that the Pilot 1 alliances have had. You see some specific challenges to specific alliances, maybe because they're a disciplinary alliance, but you do see a lot of common challenges, problems that they all face, and it's interesting to see then the solutions they put forward. They're not always the same solutions. So there's quite a lot to be learned there already from the Pilot 1 alliances. The progress is ongoing. They're at past the intermediate stage, so moving towards the second stage of the projects here. And I think generally I can say that there's huge progress across the alliances, sometimes on specific transformation modules, sometimes across transformation modules. And we've already collected quite a number of very good practices, again, from the alliances across all of those different transformation modules, one of them, for instance, being open science. Next slide. And I think last, I will stop it there. I will check if there's any comments or questions, but I think anyway, we'll move it to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no questions at the end, I will do some about monitoring, okay? So now we have the third speaker online. This time is Emmanuel Gardan, Director of Coimbra Group. Emmanuel, are you ready?
I am ready. Good morning, Marichel. Good morning,
Hi.
everyone.
Hi, Emmanuel. We have asked Emmanuel that Coimbra has been a significant stakeholder and growing in their influence in Europe. So we wanted to know which is the vision on the ERA policy agenda from Coimbra. Emmanuel?
Thank you very much. And maybe I would add also, if you allow, Marichel, that we are associated partner to CharmEU and to the Torch project. So very happy to be here this morning with you. Sorry to not be in Dublin. Let me start maybe by sharing from where I speak. So Coimbra Group is a network of 41 universities. We are one of the longest established network of university associations. And we are we're forming quite a critical mass. If you look at the performance of our member universities in the framework programs, you can see for the Horizon Europe, we already represent 21% of all signed grants with quite significant figures for all strands of the Horizon Europe program. So this is where we talk from. And as it is an event where many alliances are represented today, I thought you might also be interested to see that our members have strongly engaged into the European Universities Initiative. 90% of our members are engaged, and it means that they are covering 8 European Universities Alliances, and as an association, we are also associated partner to 6 of them: CharmEU, Arcus, Europa, EC2U, CircleU, and Uniwell. And we, of course, build on our engagement in these alliances as associated partner and on the feedback received from our members on their involvement in the initiative to be also influential in the further rollout of the initiative. So what about our engagement in the European research area? I have displayed here the strategic priorities from our executive board for this academic year, and you can see that our active engagement in the implementation of the European research area stands very high on our strategic agenda for this academic year. It's really central in our activities. And more particularly, this follows our active involvement in shaping the policy framework behind the implementation of the policy actions. So back in 2021, we were actively engaged with the EU institutions and the other research and innovation stakeholders in shaping the Pact for Research and Innovation in Europe, which, as you know, is for the first time a document approved by the member states setting out principles for research and innovation. We also did intense advocacy for ensuring a representation of stakeholders in the governance of the new European research area. And in particular, we strongly pushed for having the university sector represented, and we are very happy that university sector is now represented alongside the other 6 sectors that have been presented before. We are formally registered as a stakeholder of the European research area and proudly represented for our sector by the EUA and Jeroen, and I'm sure that Stefan, who will speak later, will develop more on that. And we've also been consulted and have been very active in sharing our views on the content of the ERA policy agenda and these 20 policy actions that have been presented earlier. We also look forward to engage in shaping the next ERA policy agenda for after 2024. So for the implementation, which is one of our strategic priorities this year, we consulted last year our members to identify among the 20 ERA policy actions which ones were a priority for our members for our collective action together, but also which ones they believed we could bring added value. And they have identified 8 of them. We also took into account our internal capacity. So you can see here the 8 actions where we have committed to contribute to implementation. So in particular, I would like to highlight action 3 on reform of the research assessment. We've been closely participating to the core groups, drafting the research reform agreement, and also in the core group setting the governance, and we are founding member of the QARA. Action 4, I will come later more in depth, but we have proposed to co-sponsor this action jointly with member states, and it's Portugal who has proposed to co-sponsor on the side of member states. Action 5 on gender equality and foster inclusiveness, we will be represented in the action subgroups. There's the first meeting next week. Action 6 on academic freedom, but action has not really started yet. Action 8 on research infrastructures, where we are also actively involved in the different activities. Sorry for the noise. Action 11 on the green transformation, and in particular, we're involved on the strand of work on the future of work. Action 13, we have proposed to the university sector to co-chair on behalf of the sector these actions alongside member states, and I'll come later more in depth on this one as well. And action 13 on science closer to citizens, which has not really started yet, at least no involvement from university stakeholder organizations. So the organizers have asked me which ERA actions we would recommend the alliances to engage with. But I wanted to start with the why, and it's been also recalled by the other speakers. I think we should go back to the Council conclusions of May 2021 on the European universities, and I have highlighted here, you can see that many keywords already in May 2021 are very closely connected to many of the ERA policy actions, and I would just mention some of them, but excellence, gender equality, the transnational cooperation, the attractiveness of research careers, the gender equality, the connection with the ecosystems, the open science, the links with the citizens, excellence, infrastructures, and also, as was recalled earlier, the role of test beds for academic career assessments, reform research systems, transfer of knowledge, career management, open science, European universities should also be guided to promote the endorsement of European Charter, Code of Conduct, and last year again, some mentions to the carriers. So there's, from the European Council conclusions, strong push for the alliances to be connected to as testbeds for many of the priorities that are highlighted in the Arab policy agenda for 22-24. And so my answer when I was asked that question is that all our actions are potentially relevant for the alliances. I always like to go back to the why of the European research area. And if you look at the official presentation from the European Commission, why is the European research area for a single borderless market for research and innovation, where member states will align their research policies and systems, and for me the most important, where researchers would see improved opportunities for moving between countries, from moving between academia and other career opportunities, and for improved conditions. So to me, the response is that ERA is for all ERA actions are potentially relevant for you, because European research area really fits with the vision, the policy vision that has been set for the European Universities Initiative. So let me provide you with a focus on the two actions where we have taken kind of a more proactive role, Action 4 and Action 13, also because these two actions obviously very connected to your respective agendas. So Action 4 on research careers, strengthening research careers. You can see here the three strands of actions that have been approved in the discussions at the ERA Forum, which are first set, developing a comprehensive European framework for research careers. Second set of actions, exchanging best practices. And third set of actions, support measures. We've had the kick-off meeting of this action last month on the 1st of February. You can see, and I think this was also said by the other speakers, this is an action that has really received huge support from the actors of the European research area, 26 member states, 3 associated countries, and 12 stakeholder organizations have committed to the implementation of this action. As I said, we've applied to co-sponsor this action, and together with Portugal and the European Commission, we've suggested to have the first meeting on the 1st of February. What did we discuss? The Commission presented the state of play of the action. So the state of play of the 3 strands that I have highlighted earlier. We have also taken time to discuss in depth the commitments that have been made by these 26 member states, 3 associated countries, and the 12 stakeholder organizations for 2023, because last year when we committed for the implementation, we actually had to fill in some explanatory document, let's say, where we committed to concrete activities, how we would contribute to the implementation of the action. Last month, during the kick-off meeting, we also started exchanging about the needs and the actions that could shape a work plan for Action 4 until 2024, but also very important for us, and this was highlighted earlier, the connections between what will be developed under this action and what's going on under other connected actions, in particular research assessment, Action 3, but many others. During that meeting, Commission has highlighted the work they have been developing on putting together a technical document on a European framework for research careers, and I'll develop a bit more in the next slide. They have also started presenting the very, very broad outline without any details about new political initiative, which would be a partnership for young researchers. And they have also highlighted the state of advancement of the Future Research Camp website, the ERA Talent platform, and the Research Innovation Careers Observatory that they're developing with the OECD. What's the role of Coimbra Group and Portugal in this? So the role of sponsors has been defined by the ERA Forum as ensuring shared responsibility and ownership. So we are striving to engage also the other university associations that have committed for this action. We are regularly preparing, reporting with them between the different meetings. The idea is also to try to bring in this action for the member states to the national level and for the sectors to the stakeholder level, potentially pilot initiatives and support the management of the implementation of this action. So one of the highlights of this action is the development of this European framework for research careers, which somehow is kind of toolbox covering several different dimensions. And the objective of the Commission is to see this European framework adopted as a Council recommendation sometime this year. So there has been a technical document that has been discussed during the meeting on the 1st of February that was then discussed by the member states mid-February. And this has also, this is also the result of months of consultations with member states, with stakeholders, and maybe some of you have been involved in this, in the preparation of this framework. A timeline that the Commission presented for the development of their own EU initiatives that are placed under this action, like the ERA4U, the Observatory on Research Careers. You can see that here that this is an action, and I will come back to that at the end of my presentation. This is an action where work has already started before even the implementation of the ERA Action 4, let's say, formally started. There are a number of activities taking place already at EU level, but the objective of ERA Action 4 with the involvement of stakeholders is also to discuss with the Commission and Member States where are the gaps and what's still needed beyond these different EU-specific actions. Maybe of interest to you, because this action is very close to your day-to-day activities, some ongoing EU projects that were outlined by the Commission with great relevance for ERA Action 4 and where we expect also contribution from them. So coordinated support action under Horizon Europe, which is called Secure. So it's a project I would encourage you to have a look at if you, and obviously you probably all are interested in the development of strengthened research careers. Another project which is Dog Talent for EU. As you see, this first project from the alliances are also considered as potential source for input for the ERA Action 4 and some ERA Talent projects that were selected recently. Action 13. So this action has initially in the ERA policy agenda the blurred name of empowering higher education institutions for the European research area in synergy with the European education area. This is an action where there's also an interesting support from the whole community, 16 member states, and yesterday we had the first meeting of the subgroup, and some additional member states were present, which has thought that there will be more member states committing for this action. 3 associated countries, and 12 stakeholder organizations, mainly from the university sector, but also beyond. With this action, the approach taken by the ERA Forum is a policy approach. This means that they have formally set up a subgroup of experts where those that have committed are represented. This is a subgroup that has a 1-year mandate, and the subgroup directly reports to the ERA Forum. So we will provide the first set of recommendations to the ERA Forum in July and the final set of recommendations by the end of this year. Yesterday, we had the first meeting. In that case, the co-chairs for these actions on the member state side are France, and stakeholder side, Coimbra Group. We discussed and have adopted the terms of reference for the subgroup, which define the scope and mandate for this group. We've also discussed the needs that each member state, associated country, each stakeholder organization identify for 2023 for this action. And the Commission had also invited a number of experts to present studies. And at the end of the day, we break out into different rooms to try build some bricks for shaping a work plan again for the implementation of this action until 2024. So this action, as you know from the ERA policy agenda and the explanatory document, has 2 main objectives, which is to strengthen the European dimension in research and innovation, and to improve excellence and global competitiveness of European higher education institutions. And the proposed tool in the Council conclusions, European Strategy for Universities, and in the policy agenda is to develop a European Excellence Initiative. So these are things that we have discussed in depth yesterday. These are the work lines that we will follow in the coming months. So there will be exchange and sharing of practices on national excellence initiatives, on cooperation of universities. The idea is also to develop support coordination between countries, analyze the results of a number of studies. So there is, in particular, of your interest, we've had already interim results yesterday of the Horizon support provided to the alliances. Also, some interim results about the impact of the existing national excellence initiatives, as well as on the definition of the perimeter of excellence. We will work together with a number of experts to analyze the needs. And as I said, we have to provide recommendations on a future support mechanism to the ERA Forum. So informally, I could also share a number of outcomes from yesterday's meeting that I think could be interesting for you today. This action, as you may know, has also sometimes been named Universities for ERA as a simplified name instead of empowering higher education institutions for the ERA in synergies with the EEA. But yesterday we all agreed on one of the participants' proposal that this should really be both ways. So we all agreed that this action is both a European research area for universities and universities for European research area. I think this is something really meaningful. We also agreed that there's a need to further define what we are talking about when we talk in particular about excellence. We agreed that this action should cover the full landscape of higher education institutions, not be restricted to any specific type of consortia of higher education institutions. We have also discussed what would be the European added value, because there's already a number of actions going on for empowering universities to take their part in the European research area, but we've really brainstormed about what would be the European added value of a new tool, of a new support instrument, and which different formats this new tool could take. So it was really a creative meeting, trying to align narratives, trying to align expectations and build consensus. This was really the objective of that first meeting. I think I already talked a bit too long, so let me finalize with some comments about what we identify as challenges, and I guess there are also challenges for alliances to engage with the ERA. First, that there's a very broad diversity in the European research policy, research area policy agenda. As you have also heard from the other speakers, there's quite a diversity in the scope of actions. Some have more policy orientation, some are very oriented towards very concrete developments. There is a diversity in the state of advancements in the different area policy actions. Some have started before even the area policy agenda was adopted. Some have not yet started, and I think this is a challenge also for you to engage with these actions. And the synergies between actions, which is something we regularly say and try to ensure, at least for the actions where we have key role. A second challenge is also the siloed approaches, because you may have also noticed that the number of priorities under the ERA, if I think about academic freedom, gender equality, research assessments, are also addressed in other policy fora, in other European initiatives, and particularly under the European education area, under the Bologna process, and this duplication of approaches and activities, but also somehow kind of plethora of initiatives recently targeting universities might be a challenge for us, for universities to be in capacity to appropriately and efficiently respond to all these policy expectations. A third challenge, and I think this is very related to the forum, and I'm really thankful you organized a session on your ERA this morning, because I personally see a challenge in public communication. It's been months we've been discussing, I would say, in the Brussels bubble among experts about the different actions, but I'm still not convinced that the Commission has successfully reached out to the final users of the European research area. And for me, I always think about this idea of researchers being able to move freely among the European countries and in their careers, and having improved research working conditions. So there's this risk of some actions being felt like very abstract for higher education institutions, and I'm sure also for alliances. And a success criteria that should always be in the mind of everyone, that there should be tangible impact for final users, and not it should not be a series of meetings and very technical documents. And a last challenge, which is the funding, because of course we've seen that many member states have committed to implementing actions, but we're also all aware that we are not yet to having a political commitment to setting a defined percentage of the GDP for research and innovation, and this is a challenge for the implementation of the ERA actions. So thank you very much for your attention, and happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Manuel, for the fresh information from Europe. It has been an intense week, I think, this week. I will ask Stefan Berman, Director of Research and Innovation of the European University Association, to give your point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me see if I see the slides. Good. I'll start just in case you don't know who EUA is, the European University Association. I like to describe our association as the trade association. Thank you very much. As a trade association, we have more than 850 universities as our members, and then beyond that, We also have 35 national rectors conferences. So the Irish University Association, for example, is one of our members. What we do is really, on one side, we work for our membership, so services, but we also provide a forum for exchange of practices, etc. And then on the other side, we represent the European voice of university. So we're quite active, of course, in Brussels, towards the Commission, the Parliament, but also other stakeholders. ERA. I cannot start today without mentioning ERA Action 5 on gender and inclusivity. We have an article, an expert voice from the chair of the EUA Council for Doctoral Education saying, yes, we still need, and we do need an International Women's Day. And because my daughter, who's very much an activist, made me promise to say that actually it should not be the International Women's Day, but it should be the International Day of Women's Rights. So I'm not starting a controversy here, but I promised for her to do that, to say that. So you all know, and I suppose you've heard a lot already about ERA, that it didn't start actually recently. EUA was part of the process back starting in 2012. We've always been very active on ERA, and we've been active in the new European research area that started with the arrival of Commissioner Gabriel. A lot of stuff happened. What is quite important to note is that in 2021, there was a creation of the ERA Forum for Transition. And there were 12 meetings that took place. None of those stakeholders were invited to. It was only member states, associated countries, and the Commission. We were invited to ad hoc workshops to give our input. Yes, it was important because, as you can see in July, they released the pact that was mentioned by Emmanuel, by Adrian also. So we were able to input into very important elements, such as the principle for R&I in Europe, but we were not part of the governance. So what we did in 2021 is lobby very hard, actually, to ensure that stakeholders would be involved in the governance of ERA. No point trying to establish a European research area if you don't have those who will be implementing it who are involved, actually. And so that's why, for example, with strong support from the Slovenian presidency, we wrote a letter in the end, an open letter to the commissioner, as well as the minister from the presidency at the time from Slovenia, supporting the Slovenian Council conclusion, where that was requiring an appropriate representation, actually, of the stakeholders as sectors, and having a stakeholder register also put in place for ERA. And so you can see the signatories there. Science Europe, for example, was part of that. We developed it, but it was also the start, actually, of the coordination between the university association. So 9 of the 11 university associations that we have today in the sector, looking together and working together on ERA were there. As a consequence, I was invited to the ERA conference in Ljubljana in October 2021, and more importantly, the council conclusion that were published in November 2021 made very clear, as you can see here, that stakeholders needed to be involved. So they needed to be involved in the delivery of ERA, both at the union but also national level. National level is left for the governments to do. So here in Ireland, for example, you may check with your government how you're going to be involved. It's very different in different countries. But at the EU level, the Commission was asked by the member states that EU-level umbrella organizations would be actually represented in 7 types of stakeholder sectors. And one of those, obviously, as you can see from the top here, are universities and other higher education areas. So that was a big victory for us. And this is the group of 11 university associations that is currently working together. So I interact quite a lot with Emmanuel, who just spoke now, and some others, to work specifically on ERA. So what happened in 2022? When we started in February with the first ERA Forum meeting where stakeholders were invited. And except for August, where we took a bit of a break, we had 1 meeting every month. 3 were on site and 7 were online. So quite intense, because we're talking about full day work, really intense. What we did first was discussing the ERA actions. So as you might remember, those were defined in the council conclusion, but they were not precise. So they were, Commission was developing notes on those. And that's where we were able to provide input as stakeholders, but also member states, etc. To do that, we had 1 meeting every 2 weeks of the ERA sectoral representation in universities. So gathering the 11 university associations. So you can imagine quite a lot of work that we did. So this is where we share the information and the intelligence we had. We coordinated our input to provide a common message, but also highlight those places where there was disagreement, or at least there was a diversity of representation also. And of course, we did a lot of debriefing of the meeting. I'm the one representing the sector within the ERA forum, and of course, I have to feed back what's happening. It already started work also on the global approach, that's Action 9, where the Guild and EUA are actively involved for the moment. And then there was various informal workshops taking place already on some of the actions. So a very active year in which we were successful in first achieving coordination of the sector. I think it was not a given. We've been able over the year to build trust between those 11 university associations to the point now where the representation is well accepted, and we're thinking to go beyond ERA. We're starting to think about the next framework program and what we can do as 11 university association about that. We're definitely, and sorry to Adrian for that, but we're definitely the most active stakeholder sector in terms of contribution to the ERA forum. All of the organization, except for one, have committed to various actions. You heard Emmanuel on Where Coimbra. I'm going to tell you about what it is that we committed to also as EUA. And now we're standing ready to get involved in the implementation of those actions we committed to, something we're still fighting for. Just last Friday, we had a meeting with stakeholders and Commission. And as a result, I've had to go back to the co-chair from member states to please put pressure on the Commission, because they're not getting it yet understood that it needs to be every single organization that has committed that can get involved in the implementation of the actions. So overall, very positive. I have to say that some are describing this as the Bologna for research. Yes, we have for the first time a process in which we're actively involved, and there's co-creation and co-design. So very positive about where this is going. We're awaiting concrete outcomes. As Emmanuel was explaining, implementation is only starting. We're seeing good signs, but it's also challenging. We're learning as we're doing, member states, Commission, and us. And I think that we're learning a lot, but we're establishing a process that's quite similar probably to what's happening with Bologna. There are some questions. One is, as Emmanuel highlighted, the financial commitment. We don't see member states understanding that, yes, it's great to want ERA and have actions, but to do those actions, we need to have the money that goes with it. Another big question is, I'm talking about Bologna, but there's huge disconnect between ERA and the European education area. And of course, for universities, that's a fundamental that needs to be solved. And that's also the case for you, the alliances. I think that instead of looking at on one side education, the other side research innovation, you have to blend the two. They have to come together. And so that's something that for ERA, we need to find the right synergies with education. And unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing with the Commission, where the result of a few years of Gabriel has not been actually more of common work between EAC and DG Research, but actually they're completely separate. So the good news, though, is that member state, the stakeholders are in a meeting where we brainstorm about the future of ERA. That was a given, and member states, even those who were opposed to stakeholders coming in, are very positive about us now being part of the whole process. So these are the commitments from the member states in blue, and then you see commitments in yellow from the stakeholders. The threshold was 13, and as you can see, One of the disappointing aspects for some, and others are saying it's great, is that all ERA actions made it. 15 is out just because it was pulled out, it was not mature enough, it was the ERA hubs, and 18 was folded it into 19. So we are left with 18 actions that you see there. The only one that did not make it, because recently 2 and 17 just made it, the only one that is out is the one on the R&I investment and reform. Surprise, surprise, member states do not commit enough to those. This is the one thing that needs to change as we move forward, and definitely something we'll be focusing on. And yes, Action 4 is the one that collected the biggest number of commitment from member states. You see there that we're at 26, there's only one missing. But you have to understand that both for us, the stakeholders, and the member states, this is a lot of work. I mean, it's intense work, and they don't all have the, maybe Germany and France can commit to all the actions. It's not the case for Cyprus, for Bulgaria, and some other countries. So that's what we have to think about. It's not because they don't commit, they don't think it's important, and that's also to keep in mind. This is how the 11 University Association committed. EUA, for example, committed to all 20 actions, but we have in there 11 that are of high priority for us. And we're really focusing on those. The other thing we are achieving, as I said, is coordination. The C that you see here in the table is those actions, that are those organizations that are coordinating specifically one action for all the other ones. So typically on 4, as Emmanuel said, it is Coimbra that's actually coordinating. Or on 13, it's also Coimbra. And you can see how we split the work. Without splitting the work, we could not do it. It's just way too much to focus on here. Because in the end, Emmanuel is right. You should think about getting involved in all the actions. But there's so many. It's huge dossiers that you have there. So now we're in the phase of implementation, and that's what you see here. And I don't have the time to go into the details of how the different actions are being implemented. But you can see that some have dedicated subgroups. Some others are working through ad hoc workshops. Some here at the bottom, honestly, we don't even know why some are in there. Action 8 is on S3. S3 has a life of its own. That is typically one that needs to be, kept informed for ERA form, but why is it an action? Same thing in a sense for Action 1. At the start it was about open science, but in the end it's just about EOSC. That one also could go. So moving forward, we're starting to think also of what it is that we will focus on in the future. I think the 2 very good signs is that beyond 2024, we're going to have a new ERA policy agenda. But this time around, stakeholders will be able to co-create. We will be able to come up with our own actions and suggest actions. Do I suspect a lot of new actions will come in? No. For the simple reason that we have a lot on our hands already. Only a few, I think, will drop like Action 7. So we'll have to think carefully about how many more we want to have in the ERA policy agenda. That said, there are opportunities. The second really good sign is that Commissioner Gabriel and our DG Research do want to create links also between the next framework program and the next ERA policy agenda. I think that's a very good sign. That means funding, and hopefully that will attract also member states to think a bit more about getting their funding and the synergies. Overall, and I was asked a question, which one do you think that you should get involved to? Well, obviously, Action 13 that Emmanuel just described in details. Action 17 just made it in with the 2 new commitments from member states, and that's definitely one that I know is of interest to you. But beyond that, definitely Action 4 that Emmanuel also described. I cannot go without Action 3. I'll be talking about COARA right after. That's a given, of course, coming from the EUA. But then there's a whole other series of action, I think I'm putting here in orange, that you should think about, depending on the focus of your alliance. Because I think that here in this case, it somewhat depends on what you want to focus on. Yes, you could do everything, but at the same time, you have to choose your battles. And that's where some of those are, of course, just suggestions. So with that, I will, yes, right in time, I will stop. And thank you for your attention, and happy to answer questions right after.
Thank you very much. Many messages that the European universities have shared with your speech. We are going to do a report with all the slides, so you don't do, as in the commission they said, you can take the pictures, but you don't need to do that, okay? I know that we are just in time, but maybe we can accept 2 questions. Anyone on the, I think Nina is checking the YouTube too, because I have many, but yes, please. Wait a second that you have a microphone.
Mic works.
Yeah, thanks very much, Stefan. That was really, really good. I've kind of a broader meta question for you particularly. If you were to kind of summarize post-ERA, its impact on society. So when we think of the beneficiaries of research and our societal partners in terms of industry, community, government, citizens, what does this do for them?
Do you want to go first? Yeah, so happy to do that. I don't know yet. That said, I think the potential impact can be big, but we're only starting. As I try to describe it, this is a process we're starting in which I fully agree with you. We are not yet at the point where beneficiaries are seeing something concrete. There's different lines of actions they're taking. For example, the Commission is launching a CSA where they're looking specifically at getting ERA, raising awareness, and then bringing it to stakeholders at the national level. So that's going to be a concrete action, but it will only start in 2024. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I think that now that we're starting in the implementation, and especially with actions like Action 13 that Emmanuel described, there's definitely going to be implications that will take place. And you will be consulted one way or another as an alliance, as a university, etc. But it raises the other issue, and the final line of action that I hope member states will take on, is that they are the ones who need to make sure that the national stakeholders are consulted. I think we're happy about how we are consulted and brought in the ERA process, but you need to have that. It's quite interesting as Norway, as an associated country, has been super active in the whole process in 2021 and 2022 to involve their stakeholders. The quality of their input has had a big impact on the actions, and that's because they've consulted the whole time with their stakeholders. Other countries have not. And those differences is what needs to be leveled out, I think. Because, again, I don't know how you are consulted. Kate, you were saying that you have good contact with the government. I'll be meeting with your government representative on ERA on Friday. So that's something I will be discussing. But I think it's also for you to make sure that in your country, you are being consulted about ERA. But I do hope that give it 1 or 2 years, and this will become more concrete. I don't think we're going to get to the point where ERC, Marie Curie, names like that are going to be like ERA, but why not? Let's imagine that. But in the end, who cares? Because I think what is important is not ERA, is actually the reforms, the policies, the guidelines that will come out of that and how useful they're going to be. Something like action number 7 is almost over and has come up with 2 guidelines, new codes. Those are concrete things that university can start using. They need to be aware of this, and that's something we see as EUA as a role of getting this across to.
I think Garrett got to add something.
Yeah, I'm going to turn so I can look at you. So I'm going to disagree slightly with Stefan just to spice this up. And I'm going to be specific because so what I mean here is that some of the actions are already relatively progressed or advanced. We're talking about 20 actions here, but in reality, some of them are moving quite fast forward. If I take 2 particular actions, which I know and I'm working on specifically, so action 1 on open science, in one project I'm involved in called EOS Future, we have been working the last 1.5 years to develop a monitoring framework for national contributions to EOSC and open science. We've worked exclusively with the member states on this, and it's already now having an effect at a member state level in terms of not just tracking the investments and policies and practices that they're doing in open science, but crucially pushing, nudging them strategically towards where they want to go collectively. And we're already now seeing effects on that already after 1.5 years. It's not the action as a whole, but specifically within the action, you see concrete results with direct interaction with the member states, and that will trickle down then over the years to the institutions themselves and then ultimately to the researchers. For Action 4 on research careers, or Action even 3 on assessment, there's 2 projects myself and colleagues are involved in. One is called OPUS, on indicators and metrics for incentivizing and rewarding open science, and the other one is called Secure, on essentially securing research careers and improving research careers. There we've been in contact with many of the colleagues you've seen on the screen there, all these different organizations, particularly of researchers, and the goal is ultimately to propose a new assessment system for researchers that takes not just open science into account, but all the other activities, and then also develop a whole comprehensive framework for research careers. So this is already now engaged in consultation with researchers on the ground, trying to give input on what they think should work there. Again, knock-on effects will be years from now, but it's already happening and taking place. That's not the action as a whole, it's just specific activities that are taking place within the actions. And I assume it's the same for some of the other actions, if not all of them.
Thank you. I don't know if Emmanuel was going to intervene.
Yes, for me, this is the key question, so thank you very much for raising it. I would complement on what Stefan said, who was highlighting the involvement of stakeholders at national level. What I see very positive here also, but I hope it will spread across all member states, is that countries like Austria, for instance, Germany, and yesterday Norway announced they will do the same. They are developing national ERA action plans. And here, I think, is part of the response to your question, which we hope for as many member states as possible to develop national ERA action plans. This means that there might be in the future changes in legislation, new funding instruments. This is what we should hope for. And I think this is also why it is so important, as Stefan has stressed, that stakeholders are sitting at the same table as member states and the Commission for the implementation of the actions, because this is the message that we can constantly remind them of, that we should have tangible impact for researchers, for industry, for the final users. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. I don't know if we have for just one small comment, quick comment and quick answers.
Just a very small question to open the box of new things. Previous week, the European Commission and the government of the United Kingdom announced the Windsor framework for having UK universities joining the Horizon program, and maybe more. I would love to see, I had loved to see all the university associations of Europe just mixing up and making things. But what about if this United Kingdom universities Windsor framework enters into the game? Will this change anything positively, negatively, or just pitch 7?
It'll definitely increase their rankings because the universities in the UK are quite high up. But I don't know the legal framework for that. Maybe Stefan knows.
I mean, I think that von der Leyen said it right away. I mean, this opens up for, as soon as it's ratified by the parliaments, which I know it's not going to be a problem in Europe, but it might be a bit more difficult in the UK. But as soon as it's ratified, it means that the association is wide open. And I think this is a wonderful news. We've always at EUA been very supportive. And I think it would be, crazy, and we all know this, no point discussing it. We all know that having UK within the research area of Europe is fundamentally a benefit. And not just for the UK, but of course for us on our side. So we're much looking forward to this being ratified. As far as I understand, it's going to take from 1 to 9 months for this to be settled. But look out in the next 9 months for this to be happening. But I think that it's pretty. I mean, the signs are I mean, the stars are aligning at last, and I would never have believed this would to happen a month ago.
And in principle, the alliances are open. They're already accepting new members. So.
I think we need to move on.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think we need to close if we want to take some coffee. So thank you very much for the speakers, for your contributions, for being here, even online. So thank you very much to Adrian, Emmanuel, Stefan, and Gareth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just before, for everyone in the room, we're going to take 15 minutes for coffee. We're going to steal time back from lunch. So the next session will start at 11:45. So take a quick break, get some coffee, and back here for 11:45.
get started, but it's still not on the mic. Yeah, yeah. So, all right, everybody, please get back to your seats. We will continue with the program. So welcome everybody to our last panel session before the lunch break to discuss the European perspective on the reform of research assessment.
Could we get everyone to take their seats, please? The next panel is due to start, so if I could get everyone to take their seats. And just while you're doing that, to remind you that we are starting this panel a couple of minutes late. It will run for an hour, at which point we will then break for lunch. Lunch will be 45 minutes long, but I will have more instructions for you after this panel. So I will now pass you back to the chair for this panel, who will take you through, okay?
Yeah, so welcome to our session on the European perspective on the reform of research assessment. So my name is Reko Leino. I'm the Vice Rector for Research at Åbo Academy University in Turku. I'm really happy to be here with my other Finnish colleagues, our Head of International Cooperation, Pia Grant, and our Director of Research Services, Mats Lindfeldt, and then also my Vice Rector colleague, Marko Juuas. We feel really proud and privileged to be part of this fantastic University Alliance and be here together with you in Dublin. So we'll have 4 presentations in 1 hour. I think if there is any time for questions or discussion, I will leave that to after the presentations. 2 presentations will be online, and the first one I believe is from Jean-Emmanuel Fauré, who is the team leader of research assessment, the research and innovation unit of the European Commission. We have hopefully the presentation ready.
So good morning, or rather I could say also good afternoon here in Brussels. Many thanks for giving me the opportunity to present some recent developments with reform of research assessments. And I'm very sorry I couldn't join you in Dublin. First of all, I would like to start with highlighting a few elements of the rationale for reform of research assessments. First, the research process is changing, evolving quite rapidly, becoming digital with a diversity of research outputs. So not anymore only publications, but also research data, research softwares, etc., protocols. It is also becoming more collaborative and open with the mainstreaming of open science practices. This is a first strong element for the rationale of reforming. The second is that, and this was highlighted earlier this morning, to address the current challenges, and in particular societal challenges, there is a need for more collaborative and more interdisciplinary research, with here again a strong diversity of outputs and the need to engage in particular with society. Still, the current assessment system is very much a system that favors competition and that is based on publications in high profile in journals that are with high journal impact factors. And we see some inappropriate uses of some journal and publication metrics in order to assess the quality and the impact of research. Furthermore, it is important that we have a system that supports in the best way possible the quality of research, and that contributes to an attractive research environment. And for this, we need both a system change, but also some cultural change, and thereby the importance of involving all stakeholders. from universities to research funders, and at the core, at the center, researchers that are the subject of the assessment in particular. So for these reasons, the reform of research assessment is a priority of the era, the new era. And it is actually one of the actions, as was pointed earlier this morning, one of the era actions, action 3. And it has been supported very strongly by member states through, in particular, several EU Council conclusions recently in 2021 and 2022. There has been a lot of work carried out, intense co-creation over the last 2 years, and progress made with towards reforming research assessment. In 2021, the Commission initiated a broad consultation of research organizations that lasted almost a year and ended up with the publication of a report which is the outcome of the consultation, highlighting we could identify 10 guiding principles for changes that could be agreed with stakeholders, with research organizations, and also identifying a way forwards for accelerating changes. And this way forward consisted in bringing together organizations that are willing to effect changes around an agreement and a coalition. And this was actually then developed during the course of last year, 2022, with an agreement established and published in July after a lot of discussions with several hundreds of research organizations throughout Europe, and together also with discussions on how the coalition could be organized and governed. Governance documents were published in October last year, with the birth of this coalition, COARA, the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessments, through its constitutive assembly that took place on 1st December last year. So here we have an approach with basically 2 legs. The agreements that sets a direction, and the coalition that is there to form a platform for exchange of information and mutual sharing, helping the signatories of the agreement to implement what is enshrined in the agreements. And so what is the vision and what is the core elements of this agreement? The agreement recognizes that assessments of researchers and research organizations need to take into account and recognize a diversity of outputs, a diversity of practices, and a diversity of activities in research. And this in order to maximize the quality and the impact of research. And another very important element that is part of the vision in this agreement is that this will require basing assessments on qualitative judgments supported by more responsible use of quantitative indicators. The agreement is structured first with 10 guiding principles as were identified during the consultation in 2021. And it goes further than only principles. It goes into commitments, 10 commitments for changes that correspond to actions that can be effectively implemented. And most importantly, it also highlights a time frame for implementation, which sets first the requirement to engage into changes of criteria and processes in the signatory organizations by the end of the first year after signing the agreement. And then within 5 years after signature, to have been through a full cycle of reform, of changes. As of today, there are now close to 500 signatories of these agreements from 41 countries. I think important to point here that we see that half of the members of CHARM EU are signatories of the agreement, and more generally, about a third of the members of European University Alliances have signed the agreement. Second point I'd like to make here is the fact that as was intended, as was designed, the signatories are covering a broad range of organizations, not only universities, but also research centers, research infrastructures, public and private funders, academies, learned societies, researchers' organizations, agencies that are involved in assessments, and other relevant non-for-profit organizations when needed. Amongst these close to 500 signatories of the agreement, over 420 have already joined formally the coalition COARA. With 2 slides, I would like to highlight now the next steps and also the Commission role in these next steps. First of all, most importantly, it is now time for the signatories to implement the commitments that are enshrined in the agreements. And as I said earlier, there is a time frame set for that. It is expected that the process of analyzing and identifying what can and needs to be reformed in terms of criteria and processes in each institution takes place during the first year after signature. So for the first signatories by the end of this year, and with a full cycle of changes implemented by the end of 2027, so 5 years after the signature of the agreement for the first signatories. To help the signatories in implementing changes and to offer a space for exchange and discussion, COARA will launch, hopefully still this month, a call for proposals for working groups. The COARA is expected mainly to operate through working groups that will address topics decided by the members. That could be, for example, bias in peer review or responsible use of indicators in certain contexts, etc. And there are many topics that can be thought through. So having working groups as communities of practice, identifying good practices, if not best practices, recommendations, etc., helping the members to implement their commitments. Another important step beyond the setting of this call for working groups and the identification of the groups and the start of these groups is securing funding for the coalition operation. And the Secretariat is actively working on this currently. A third element I'd like to highlight here, in parallel to the work of the coalition, is the importance of national dialogues and national activities. Having the signatories and members of the coalition to also engage and be involved in discussions at national level in order to ensure that the national frameworks, being legal or administrative, are effectively conducive to the changes that are foreseen by the signatories and by the coalition members. A fourth dimension is global alignment and cooperation. The agreement is open for signature by organizations outside of Europe. It's not restricted to European organizations. And we think this is very important to attract non-European organizations in order to also facilitate alignments and dialogue of approaches across various regions of the globe, because to not hamper mobility of researchers, and on the contrary, to facilitate it, we need to have certain coherence across the globe. And a fifth line of action will also consist in developing synergies with other initiatives. And here, especially, I'm thinking about European Universities Alliances, that's for many of them are working on changes to research assessment, and it will be very important that all aligns very well. This last slide to highlight the Commission role and support in all this. As you understand, the Commission facilitated the development of the agreement and coalition. It signed itself the agreement on November last year as a research funder. Also important to point here that the European Research Council signed this last month. And for the next steps, the Commission is committed to continue support to the coalition and the reform of research assessment through several ways. First, being an active member of the coalition and participating to the working groups and activities of the coalition, by providing operational support to the COARA Secretariat. Actually, currently, we help the COARA Secretariat in its activities. By providing financial support through Horizon Europe. We have a call that is currently open and closing tomorrow, and that it tends to provide support to the operation of the coalition. By also facilitating and liaising the coalition with member states and associated countries in the frame of the ERA Forum that was discussed earlier this morning. And this to facilitate and ensure that national frameworks are conducive to changes by the coalition members. And last, very important, to ensure to facilitate alignment at global level and synergies with other European initiatives. And I would like to stop here, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jean-Emmanuel. So we indeed need public or open dialogue and discussion on how to measure in the future research and scientific excellence and impact, and also how to merge different partially overlapping initiatives in Europe. So please stay online while we move to the next presentation. So I wish to welcome Stefanie Bergmans, Director of Research and Innovation of the European University Association.
This one I'll sit down and be quiet. And I'll take the chance because I forgot to do it first. Thank you very much to Charmy Yu for the invitation. It was wonderful to spend my first night ever in Ireland here on the campus. So I will enjoy my stay here in Ireland. Thank you very much. And the other thing I wanted to say is that, of course, alliances are very important for EUA. You know, depending on the alliances, it ranges from 50% to 100% of the members who are also members of EUA. And of course, we've been very active in this area. One of the last things we published is around the governance of the alliances. And we have a new one coming. But first, here, COARA. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, because I don't have a lot of time, to tell you about actually why we got in. Of course, I can tell you about the surveys, because that's one of the things we were able to do, is do survey of our membership. And it was clear from those surveys that, well, open science, for example, is not in the reward system enough. And not just that, when you look at what, you know, in 2019, when we looked at it, what we saw is that, well, open science is the vast majority. Oh, okay. Just a second. There you go. It should be okay. And to skip a long story short, what's really important is that we published about 2 years ago a Vision 2030 for universities, Universities Without Wall. And in there is clearly stated that one of the 3 key actions to achieve this vision for 2030 is actually the need for a reform of not just research assessment, because I insist on this, but on career assessment within universities. So for us, it was a given when the European Commission approached us that EUA would be involved with Science Europe and the Commission and Karen Strooband in a drafting team to draft this agreement. What I want to do with this slide is insist on the fact that we didn't do this on our own. It was a true co-creation process, and one that's a good example of what I think is we could achieve with ERA. So yes, with the help of the Commission, Science Europe, EUA, and Karen Strooband, we drafted. But we didn't do that on our own. We worked with a core group of 20 organizations, umbrella organizations, including other university associations. We had 6 meetings with them from January or February to July. We also had a stakeholder assembly. We had 4 meetings last year with this stakeholder assembly with more than 300 organizations also involved. And in addition, as mentioned by Emmanuel, there was this link with the reform where member states were also able to input. So that led to the final agreement that was published, as Emmanuel mentioned, in July. So that's really important. For us, our aim was really, we were convinced, and we are convinced, that universities are needed to bring about the change. So for us, what's really important was, I think we ticked all the boxes so far, to have the universities actively involved in the reform of research assessment. It means also that they needed to make informed decisions. That's why, for example, we held last year a series of 4 webinars for our membership. And we opened it up to outside of just our membership, because this was so important. We also had about 20 national workshops that we organized with the national rectors' conferences in different countries, including one here in Ireland. It was also important to have universities that actually are well represented within the governing bodies, and we're very happy to see that the president is from University of Maastricht, that Paul Boyle, the vice president for research innovation from EUA, is actually also elected on the board. We've got Eva Mendes, who's from a university in Spain. And let's face it, the other sectors are well represented, but many of them are also representative who end up being at universities. So universities are well there. So we're convinced that it's only with universities being well represented as a sector that we'll be able to have the interest really well accepted in the coalition and, more importantly, the reform. So the numbers were just given by Emmanuel, but you can see here I'm focusing really on the universities. And I think that what is quite important here is to see that some countries are ahead of others, and there's still work to be done. So Poland, Italy, France, for example, are on top. It's a bit unfair because when you think about it, Netherlands there has all of its universities that have signed. Huh? So the representation is not really fair. But what's clear, though, is that while some countries have signed on massively, others have not, and some are missing. So that is certainly one of the focus we will have, is try to broaden this as our action plan for COARA. For the charm, yes, among the 51 very first signatories in September was Utrecht University, and we have a speaker right after. But also, we've got 2 more of the university alliances have joined. So I was asked, what is it that alliances can do? Well, there you go. You've got concrete action. You can join the coalition and sign the agreement, actually. Very similar to what Emmanuel said, I'm not going to go over everything. I would just say that in terms of what's coming next, CORA operations are starting. Please be patient. There were the holidays since 1st December. Things are starting. They're also focusing on getting money from the European Commission. There's a project that they're putting together right now. But a call for working groups is going to come very soon. So work is going to actually start, and I suspect a new assembly is going to be taking place also in the coming month. What I'd like to insist on is I really believe that we need to find quick wins. For example, in Italy, you've got a unique situation where at the national level, university have signed on, the government is in, ANVOR, the agency, is in. That's a place that can show an example. Okay? It could be the case also in Ireland, because I think that the university well engaged are seeing this as an opportunity to think about how they're going to do together assessment in the future. Some other things that's important, I think, as I mentioned, especially for universities, is expanding this membership in Europe to a broader range of universities in terms of geography. So that's one thing we'll be focusing on. Funding will be key. And I think the European Commission project will be one of the sources, but there should be more. And of course, given that our focus at EUA is not just research assessment, but career assessment, I think we would urge, and we're thinking actually to have a working group focusing on academic career assessment also. What does it mean for you, universities? Well, the first thing is that a question I often get is this legally binding? Well, it's not. It's not at all. You sign an agreement, and that allows you to join a coalition. It's purely on a voluntary basis. But let's face it, It's not legally binding, but it's morally binding, because you can expect that the COARA community will look at you and how you deliver. Your research community within your university will also look at you. And then beyond that, I think that hopefully with the momentum that I hope the initiative will keep, the whole community will be looking at you also on how you deliver. So that's quite important. Another question I was asked quite a lot is, am I going to have to pay anything? No, you're not. There's not going to be any fees. So that's quite clear. And for now, at least, the document is quite clear about the budget and what will be done in the first year. So that you will be able to track. There will need to be some fundraising. So if you can get your funder in Ireland to participate, for example, that might be a good idea. So maybe something you can do there to influence. That said, Commitment 5 specifically calls for committing resources. Let's face it, you're not going to be able to do any reform at your university if you don't have people working on it in a certain budget dedicated to this. Let's face it though, many of you already have something going on. And so this can automatically also be allocated. Also, autonomy is very important, and we made it part of the agreement. So institutional autonomy, it's based really on what it is that you want to do, and your plan, and your commitment of resources. It will not be imposed. There will not be a minimum requirement. Emmanuel mentioned it. What is expected of you also is to be active the first year by setting up a work plan. How is it that you're going to engage? How will you start engaging in this? By actually coming up with the things you're going to be reviewing, the new tools you're going to be putting in place. And then over the 5 year, doing that first cycle of reform. So that's actively what you're going to have to do. It's not like DORA, which is great, but in the end, a lot of universities sign it and then nothing happens. That's what we want to avoid, and this is action-driven. So the last thing is, we will do the same. We're starting our work plan for EUA that will focus on supporting our members, both those that are in the coalition, but also those that are not in COARA. So we want to make sure that all of them are, if not engaged, at least informed of what's happening. And of course, we'll engage on COARA. As I said, we might be leading a working group. We'll definitely, as soon as the call is out, see what the call is like, and we'll be acting upon that. We will continue to work around ERA and all policy developments, of course, around the research assessment, not just Action 3. We will have a role on the global outreach. We have sister organizations in other regions in the world with whom we meet, and so, of course, we'd like to raise that with them. And, of course, we are ready to support the steering board. Paul Boyle, as I said, is already a member of the steering board, but we would be more than happy as EUA with the experience from the last year that was quite intense in also participating with that. So I'll stop here and I'll take any questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stefan. And as just a minor update to the slides also of the Charm partners, Åbo Academy University has signed the COARA agreement. I think we believe on the 4th. Also, I believe the Finnish National Research Funding Agency, Academy of Finland, has done that as well. So we move on with the program, and the next speaker is Teresa Maguire, Director of Research, Strategy and Funding from the Irish Health Research Board. Welcome.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Delighted to be here. Learned an awful lot this morning. My name is Teresa Maguire, and I'm from the Health Research Board in Ireland. For those of you here and online who don't know anything about the Health Research Board, let's see if I can get this to work. There we go, use this. That just sets out what our mission is. One point I'd mention, so we're a health research funder. 20 years ago, if I was standing here, I'd be saying that we're a health research funder, but actually if I was showing you what we funded, it would essentially be basic research, biomedical, applied biomedical, translational. This will have relevance hopefully later on as we're talking about research assessment and the importance of it and the relevance of it. Today, because of a number of changes in the Irish landscape, not least a seminal report back in 2002 called Making Knowledge Work for Health, and the fact that we're funded by the Ministry for Health and the establishment of other funding agencies in our landscape, not least Science Foundation Ireland. Long story short, our remit was changed. And we got more funding for that, but we really face more, I suppose we kind of like the two-headed or the two-faced God, Janus. We're looking into the academic system as a research performing organisation, looking at skills, capacity, infrastructure, capability, but we're also looking to our health system, both at a policy level, to our ministry, and also to our healthcare delivery system, whether that be hospitals, primary care, or social care as it is here in Ireland. So that just gives you a sense of where we sit in the landscape. The reason I mention that is, I suppose, I was reflecting that at that point in time, I suppose, you know, you could say, well, we'll change our logo, we'll change our corporate documents, we changed our board. But actually, as somebody who's been in the organisation for 20 years, the whole issue of research assessment resonates with me, because basically what we had to do was say, what are we doing? What have we done before that isn't fit for purpose? Who are our new communities? Who are the new actors we need to work with? How will we judge excellence and relevance and impact? What are our assessment processes to do that? And what are our skills and our capabilities in-house for doing that also? So I suppose a lot of what I'll touch on in terms of my reflections in relation to the relevance and impact of the research, the reform of research assessment agenda. We're a member of Science Europe, a very happy, engaged member of Science Europe, and felt really, really engaged and positive about the process in terms of drafting the agreement, and very much had a strong voice at the table. I think we're also the first funding agency to sign up to the COARA agreement in Ireland. And so I've talked about we changed quite fundamentally and had to change and look at what we were doing and how we were doing it, and really look up, look out, learn from others. That has been helpful, and I think is a good starting point when we're having a conversation about both the ERA actions and also the reform of research assessment. If you're insular, if you're fearful, if you're risk averse, if you're not in a mindset to learn from others, I can understand why the change in deliberations can feel quite unsettling. Our organisation changed, but actually the research system all around us is constantly changing, and it has changed a lot. My reflections would be that it's more complex and multifaceted, with way more actors than I ever remember 20 years ago. It's much more ambitious, it's much more outward looking, and more collaborative, and needs to be more collaborative than ever, for lots of different reasons, as I've outlined on the slides. Research funding now is expected to provide solutions to problems facing governments and societies, both nationally and globally, and perhaps even going another step further into taking steps towards putting those solutions in action. So certainly a big change into the whole research system, the evidence system, evidence support system, which is different, connected but different, as we found during COVID, the data infrastructure system and the ability to share across organisations and borders, and the whole move into implementation science and implementation research. So a lot has changed. I don't need to remind anybody that the economic constraints on public funding are multiplied in recent years through various different crises and so on, and that has meant that there are increased political demands to measure impact, to demonstrate value of the investments in research. And for us, and I think for many of us in the room, assessment is one of the most fundamental and significant processes that is a thread that flows through all of that. It encompasses everything from what are your goals, what do you value, what do you want, what would success look like, how do you measure that, what budgets do you assign to it, How do you select awards? How do you track them? And how can you support career development and capacity building? So when you think about it like that, I suppose I'm just trying to set the scene that I think actually not being involved in these discussions and learning from one another seems counterintuitive. In terms of relevance to a funder, and I know most of the morning has focused on universities and it's been really, really interesting. From a funder's perspective, I suppose I just put like what are the things that both in terms of our funder, our Department of Health, government more broadly, our board, our Audit and Risk Committee, our public, our research performers, what are all of the things that you're trying to, I suppose, strike a balance on? Well, we want to focus on quality and excellence. We can have lots of discussions about what that means and how we measure it. We want to incentivise diverse career progression, as we've heard here this morning. We want to have appropriate measures for assessing researchers, whether they're as individuals or as teams. And I think in any organisation, not just in education or research, it's always a challenge for organisations. How do you acknowledge, support and reward the work of teams over individuals? For us, we're constantly trying to set ourselves up to ensure that we bridge the evidence to practice gap in that space that we found. We want to reward and recognise a broad range of outputs. Transparency and trust is key. We've got really, really good evidence about trust in health research of our public. That was really, really helpful during the COVID crisis. But we want to work hard to retain that and maintain it and grow it. And many of the other issues that I've listed here in terms of open science agenda, the EDI agenda, reducing burden for all parties across the funding or the research assessment lifecycle. That includes members of my own team. That includes applicants, it includes the research offices, it includes those managing contracts, it includes peer reviewers in the process. But on the other hand, ensuring, as my board reminds me often, that our systems and processes have to be sufficiently robust to safeguard public funds. And also then to demonstrate impact and support the case for more research funding. So there's a lot in that. It sounds again really obvious when you list it as bullet points, but it's, you know, I could preface all those bullet points by going on the one hand, but on the other hand, but I'm not. At the end of the day, we have to try and find our way through that and hit the right balance. I've just given an example in terms of being a signatory to COARA and our interest in this space is, I mean, we're a member of the DORA Funders Forum and we've been involved in some of the pilots on narrative-based CVs and so on. We routinely run unconscious bias training for staff and reviewers. We've adapted all of our rating scales to ensure that we have more qualitative information in there. We constantly have our ears open to either alternatives or adaptations to peer review, and we're interested in some of the pilots that are going on in that. We have a JEP plan. We've established a new EDI committee in the organisation, both to look in but also to look out. We're the only public funder of clinical trials in Ireland, so we put a lot of effort into promoting inclusion in those research protocols to make sure that they are representative of our societies and that they do bring in ethnic minorities, hard-to-reach groups and so on. I think we've been a long-standing supporter and a proponent of public and patient involvement, which is key in health research. Recognising and funding diverse roles. I think we're sometimes a bit of an outlier in the kind of national landscape, and I know certainly with the formation of our new department and so on, explaining that actually it's not just university scales that we need to pay on, that we actually are trying to embed research roles within our healthcare system, and then we also have hybrid roles that span those. We also have now clinical trial support roles. You know, in open science, you have the data steward roles. So trying to work with the system to try and think, what are these new roles, and where can we put frameworks and supports in place to value them? Fair and open data has been mentioned already, and I won't repeat that other than they are absolutely key for us in the Health Research Board, and we have our own HRB open research platform where people can publish on it. I'm not going to touch on this slide, they're for you to take away, but just again to see some of the groups that we've been involved in, EVER, Research on Research Forum. We're, in terms of outputs We use what is called the Buxton Haney payback framework, and that has 16 different categories of looking at diverse outputs, outcomes and impacts, and we think this is really, really key. It's hugely relevant in the health and social care area, but I'm sure it's equally transferable across other areas. We're spending a lot of time at the moment, fueled by the reform of research assessment agenda, looking at our evaluation strategy and plan. What are we measuring? When are we measuring it? What matters to us? What are we measuring or what are we collecting? Doing a data audit that we don't actually need. That is burdensome on people, but also we're not using it, and are we missing things that we should be? And it's hard to do that in the absence of thinking about these broader issues. So I think, you know, a message within our organisation is absolutely we're committed to the burden and the bureaucracy discussion also, but actually the umbrella for us for doing that is actually the reform of research assessment agenda, because we feel that actually one without looking in that broader picture doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and we're looking to streamline reporting processes, etc., which brings us into the whole importance of identifiers, both unique grant reps, ORCIDs and so on. So you can start to see that one thing begets the other, and it's like layers of an onion. In terms of impact, why are we doing this? Why are we spending time on it? Well, I think I've shown that actually, depending on what you do, as an actor of government and as a funder with huge responsibility, you constantly have to look at, is what we're doing fit for purpose? Are new things happening out there? Can we learn for others? Can we do things better? Are we achieving the impact that we want to achieve? So I think in sort of my summing up at the end of the session, or maybe leaving a few points, I would say there's huge potential for, and there's definitely a need for improvements and change in the system, in the research assessment system. A number of people have mentioned the word sustained or sustainability today, and I think that's really, really key. That needs to be part of our thinking from the outright. I think there's no single solution, or we believe there's no single solution. It's not just a magic bullet. It isn't going to be that we're all going to agree one template of a CV or one type of scoring matrix or so on. I don't think that's the case. That's certainly not our expectation in going into it. However, we do believe that working together in the direction of a common goal and with shared principles is definitely the way to go. And I would say our experience in working with alliances like DORA, like other funders forums and so on, and it's similar to what you're finding in the university alliances, is definitely the way to go. What's different here for us and what's really attractive is that it's not just funder to funder, it's funder to funder, it's country to country, it's university to funder, and it's everybody who has a voice and a say in this. So that community, both communities nationally joining together and then national communities working with other national communities. And we really, really welcome the intent of COARA to host national communities on the project, in addition to working groups, because I think that's going to be really, really important. So simplification, harmonisation, coordination, pilots. We're already sitting back and not duplicating some things. We're looking at other funders who actually have pilots in the field on certain of these areas at the moment. And so we're listening and waiting for them. Tools, frameworks, really just a forum for open dialogue and exchange. And my final reflections would be, we're hoping, certainly as a member, working with others, that what we do then will be informed, it'll be proportionate, and it'll be transparent, importantly, and that where we don't do things or we take an alternative approach, there's a rationale for it, and we have the basis of a conversation with people around it. I think it's an evolution, not a revolution, and I hope I've showed you that actually some of these things, certainly we've been working with partners on, similar to what I've heard this morning, really for 10, 15 years. We're building on it, and I think it is an evolution. I don't think it's a case throwing all metrics out the door, and sometimes the conversation quickly can move to that place. I think it's a case of responsible use of metrics in the appropriate situations. My two final points, I suppose, I'm just going to put out there for, you know, maybe for the panel discussion, which is, I do think there's a tension, both as a public funder and in terms of working with institutions, research performing organisations, where I would say there's a huge focus, and I think it's increased certainly in the 20 years that I've been working in this area, around compliance and accountability. And I think when you think about experimentation, when you think about learning, when you think about change, when you think about trying to streamline things, and when you think about compliance and accountability, we have to try and figure out how we're going to strike a balance in relation to some of this, because I would say most of the frustrating issues for researchers, for research offices, and also for funders is often in the space of actually I don't even have a word to describe it, but you can get a sense from my body language. A lot slows down, grinds to a halt, and becomes not transparent in that space. So there's something in that about will our risk appetite get in the way of the reform? And then finally, just to echo some of the points that have been made, this will require time, skills, new roles, and systems, changes to systems, both for higher education institutes, in our case, for our health system, where a lot of the research happens, and indeed for us as a funder and as a small funder, it is time intensive. And I would say I'm disappointed that ERA Action 20 is the one that is falling below the bar at the moment. I'm also I would be disappointed in an Irish context that one of the ERA actions that has not made it into the top 10 is the focus on the strategic capabilities and the focus on sort of professional support services and management in research performing organisations, because I think that's the key to unlock an awful lot of this. I think they're underdeveloped, they're under-acknowledged, and they're absolutely critical. So I think that's a serious conversation we need to be having in Ireland, not just in Europe. And I think my final point would be, it's very clear already, even from the early discussions, even though COARA doesn't have a focus per se on careers, no matter what conversation we start in COARA, it ends up needing to be joined up and aligned with a conversation around the attractive, sustainable research careers and assessment of, same. So you can't have a conversation about assessment and careers without actually having that. So I would say, certainly from our perspective in COARA, we don't want to duplicate our dots. We want to join our dots, we want to connect our dots, maybe highlight where there are some dots that we're not really getting around the table to discuss, and really those synergies between actions, infrastructure, careers, and research assessment, and funding. Those four pillars would be my reflections that we really, really need to get our heads around. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for the inspiring presentation. I think you're right to the point in that we have a number of complex and intertwined processes currently undergoing a dynamic change, and how we as organizations or institutions and networks respond to this is really one of the key questions for our common European future. So the final speaker for this panel session will join us online. So I believe we have Paul Boiseliet, the Chair, Recognition and Rewards in Open Science from Utrecht University. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I am Paul Boiseliet, Chair of the Recognition and Rewards program that is part of Open Science at Utrecht University. I'm going to talk in a nutshell about the Dutch case. Sorry for the inconvenience. Hopefully, I'm connected now. I've been kicked out of the program.
Yes, please. Yeah, you're back.
Yes, I've experienced being kicked out of programs, so it does not offend me, but hopefully we're connected again. What I'm going to talk about is developments in the Dutch case, the university case, and international perspective. Let me first start with two national developments. One of them is the position paper of 2019 that was on recognition and rewards, a position paper signed by multiple institutes in the Netherlands, all supported by all the Dutch universities. Rianne Letschert, who is now chair of COARA, was one of the founders of this position paper, and it highlighted the importance of open science, but also of different dimensions that relate to academia, not only research, but also education, the relevance of focus on quality, academic leadership, etc. And they set the stage for developments in the Netherlands that are still moving forwards. Another important development, a national development, was the new strategy evaluation protocol, SEP, that counts for 21-27 for institutional research assessment in the Netherlands. And what is important, and not everybody is aware of that yet, is that the S was used to be standard evaluation protocol, was replaced by strategy. And strategy has two meanings. It means context and discipline, specificity, and also strategic choice. So it means that this leaves leeway for strategic choices and also context-specific approaches to research and research assessment. Now, at our university in Utrecht, we have recognition and rewards as part of the Open Science program, and Open Science is part of our strategy, our university strategy. And together with recognition and rewards, there are other domains like public engagement, open access, fair data and software, and recently open education that are part of university strategy towards a better world. Like Sean Emmanuel highlighted, this is also in line with COARA. We signed it as Utrecht University, but again, we fully acknowledge what Sean Emmanuel was saying, that the real challenge is in the implementation and the internalization, how you create the effective implementation. That's part of what we try to do within our university, but also in coalition with other partners in the Netherlands and also on an international level. So we should highlight the importance of the interface between organizations, within organizational developments, within faculties, but also the link with international developments, EU, etc. And this is why COARA is so important, I think. Within the recognition, you see we like a lot of pictures and frames. That's part of our strategy to communicate. The recognition and rewards program is very much focused towards the collective, the team effort, instead of a focus on the individual. It also highlights that that academia is much more than only research. It also incorporates education. It also incorporates patient care in our case, because we have an academic hospital at Utrecht University. Patient care is part of that. We labeled that professional performance. Leadership is very important. And principles that stem from the recognition and rewards position paper of 2019, including dynamic career paths and diversification, that people can have different profiles. And I'll say a little bit about that in one of the final slides that I would like to present. Now, what is important, that this is part of the recognition and rewards transformation, is part of our strategy, and is part of the Open Science program. And it's aligned with the 2019 position paper that was presented in the Netherlands. Now, maybe you have heard about the Nature interview of the 25th of June 2021, where we stated that we abandoned the journal impact factor for HRM purposes. That is in itself not very radical, because we signed DORA as a declaration, and as all of you know, that DORA has this statement of that you should not use an indicator like the journal impact factor for HRM purposes, such as selection, recruitment, but also appraisal and promotion. But the fact that we put it in Nature and the interview created a lot of international turmoil that we used for internal and external purposes, also to make a change within our own university and within the faculties. What we developed was a model. This is the Lotus triple model, and it consists of the different elements, 6 components. Education, research, and professional performance are the areas that we operate in. Impact is not only an outcome, but is also a way of working. This also relates to public engagement, to co-creation, knowledge circulation that we kind of embrace as part of our strategy. And we highlight that this can only be achieved by good academic leadership and team spirit. Now, this is just an overview of how we approached it, linked to our overall strategy in the development national and internationally. So we started with a vision, a mission, and a strategy, and I think it's very important to have a certain dream, a big idea, a belief system that is the basis for vision and mission and strategy. And that resulted also in the program. And it's also linked to an approach that we have applied many years ago that is very much focused on multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary research and education. Now, team spirit is the starting point in our model towards a collective approach. And we state that leadership is extremely important at all levels, hands-on, so managerial, and value-driven. I'll say a little bit about that in a minute. We focus on support staff and academic staff, and we are in a very exciting state because at the moment we are discussing whether we should abandon the distinction between support staff and academic staff and start thinking about university staff, because we see all kinds of developments where work, new ways of working, create hybrid jobs, hybrid functions, completely different way of how to look at our work and how to organize ourselves. And also in the view of teamwork, we should maybe have a completely different approach. And we are talking about that with the board of our university, and they're very positive towards a sort of new concept of looking at staff. So no longer support staff and academic staff, sort of university staff. Now, recognition and reward is a culture change in our view, and we see a lot of attention at the moment for career paths, and I'll say a little bit about that. Now, we're at the stage of leadership development. We have a leadership program at Utrecht University, and it's now aligned with the open science and recognition and rewards transformation. The first one, the U, is more the personal leadership. You and your team is the organizational leadership. This also requires certain managerial skills, competences, knowledge. And the U and the organization is the most leadership at the strategic level. And we link that to also the recognition and rewards principles to shape open science, but also recognition and rewards. And again, here is finding a balance between the individual and the collective. And I think that was something mentioned by the other presenters as well, that this is going to be a challenge for the next couple of years. Now, to conclude, I have a couple of concrete examples. So part of our Utrecht University approach is to collect and share good practices and best principles, concrete examples, because they can help also others to get inspiration, but also to learn from, and it stimulates also change. One of the examples is recently the academic hospital at Utrecht developed 6 career profiles for researchers with different kind of accents. And it also shows that you can have different tracks for your own development. And it is well developed with the whole system behind it by Rinse Benedictus and colleagues. And it's very thoughtful, and it also is aligned with the diversification and vitalization of career paths. Another tool that was recently developed by the Children's Hospitals, also part of the academic hospital, is called iProud. It's an app, it's a tool, a digital tool that can be used by individuals to shape their own careers. The interesting thing that I noticed at Utrecht is we started in 2019, 2020 with recognition and rewards, and very much attention was paid to the appraisal and to promotion. So everybody was worried about, okay, how are we going to evaluate, and what does it mean for me in terms of promotion opportunities? And now it has shifted much more towards what kind of profiles, what kind of careers are possible, and what are the career paths. These are already 2 examples of the General Hospital and the Children's Hospital, where the focus is very much on careers and diversification. This is also what the employees value. And this is also an example of one of our other faculties where exactly the same development is occurring, very much focused on career paths, where the deans and the leaders of the faculties, they implement, they allow for experiments, and the experiments are also an inspiration for other faculties and other departments to start piloting. Now, to conclude, alliances, I think, in line with the presenters before me, are extremely important. They're a form of collaborative innovation. They're a basis for a wind of change that is beneficial, I think, to all of us, for academia and societies, so open science. And I think we can learn a lot from each other. Now, and there is still a lot of work that needs to be done, also within Utrecht University, within different faculties, within different departments. And I hope also to get inspiration from many other universities who will start experimenting and transforming towards a new future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Paul. So indeed, it's equally important to discuss also how we implement in practice the principles on research assessment that we discuss. Now, I think I need to ask the organizers whether we have used exactly our 1 hour slot now, if we have time for just one single question from the audience, or...
No takers?
Okay, then I think if there are no questions, so let's thank Jean and Emmanuel and Therese and Paul and Stefan once again for their great talks, and I wish you a nice lunch break. We will get some instructions, I believe. So thank you.
Okay, thank you to our chair and our speakers for a great panel there. Just a couple of notes. We're going to break for lunch break now. We will take lunch until 1:30, at which point Siobhan is going to give you some instructions about the clusters are happening in a different building to this, so we will have people to walk you over. So don't venture too far from here over lunch. Stay around here so that we can all bring you over to the building that we're going to. One of the other things to note is that the forum report I've been asked to say will be published at the end of this month, and presentations will be shared with speakers' permission. So Siobhan is going to give you some instructions about finding the clusters afterwards, and then we can all have lunch.
Hello everyone. So as Jenny said, we're moving to a different building. We're moving to the arts block for the cluster sessions. So what is going to happen is that each cluster session has a room, and one person from TCD is assigned to guide people in that cluster session over. We will all go as a group, it's just a case we divide. So if you are going to cluster session 1, Nina Shield will be looking after you. I think a lot of you know Nina. Nina, wave. If you're going to cluster session 2, Connor Spillane will be taking you over. And if you're going to cluster session 3, Jenny Kirkwood will be bringing you over, but it might be me, but someone will be looking after you. It's just very exciting. So I think it would be best if we would leave at 1:20, which I know cuts lunch a little bit short, but I think in order to get going on time and you can enjoy the beautiful TCD campus as you walk. So now please enjoy your lunch, and at 1:20 we will head over. Thank you.